Well, in this part, Vishnu reveals his multi-armed self.
No. Read the words.
And now I have become death. Destroyer of worlds.
Hello and welcome once again to the Cine-Files, where we are continuing this season of Christopher Nolan. My name is Steve Morris. I'm a filmmaker and directing instructor in Los Angeles, California.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Rocha. I'm a writer, producer, and host and voiceover artist down here in San Diego, California. And Steve, I put my goggles on, I put my suit on, I put my top hat on, and or my fedora on, and I'm ready to walk in to this movie with my pipe. This is a daunting task we have laid out for ourselves, more so you than me, to walk into this movie. But I'm excited to have this conversation. I love this movie, man.
So do I. It's so good, and it's one of those movies where studying it just makes it better. It really does. But I will tell you, you've heard me via text complaining and stressing out. This is the most stressed out I've been in a movie since, I think, JFK, which was also very stressful because it dealt with huge issues. And we could not tackle giant films like Oppenheimer without our incredible supporters on patreon.com/thecine-files, as well as on Apple Podcasts. And particular thanks to our advisory board, who has helped to guide us to this position and come up with the schedule that led us to doing Oppenheimer. And you can join that advisory board. And of course, I should say that right now we are running a sale on Patreon, 20% off for both monthly and annual sign-up costs. And that is confirmed, by the way. Last year I said it was annual and it wasn't. This year it absolutely is. And all you have to do is go to patreon.com/thecine-files. And when you're signing up, you enter the code 33A77. That's 33A as an apple, 77, and lock in that 20% discount. And of course, we'd love you to sign up for a monthly plan, but that 20% discount is going to give you the most bang for your buck on an annual plan.
And another way you can support us here on the show, when you listen to the show, let's say you listen to it with the ads, if you hear about a product or a service that you want to try out, we'd appreciate it that you'd use our code when you sign up to try out these products or services. So you get A, a big discount, and B, you indicate to these companies that they should come back and keep supporting us here on the Cine-Files. I mean, Quince, True Diagnostic, BetterHelp, a lot of great companies have been sponsoring us over the last year. And so we'd love to keep them coming. Thompson Cigars is about to start. I just recorded the commercial for that. If you're a cigar lover, I highly, highly recommend Thompson Cigars. And there's a great discount. So listen for that ad to be popping up on our shows very soon as well.
So, John, how did you first come to Oppenheimer?
I came to Oppenheimer at a press screening. You know, once we get past 2018, 2019, just about a lot of these big films are through press screenings. And I remember seeing this at a press screening and just being utterly floored at what I'd witnessed, and wanting to run back and see it again because of how much it took out of me when I saw it. And I remember having extensive conversations about this movie with friends who had seen it as well in the business. And then eventually, of course, all of you, Steve, and all my friends, our crew, seeing it and having extensive conversations about it. It's was a one-of-a-kind experience for sure.
You know, you have the thing where you don't see a movie right away and you hear all sorts of stuff about it and your expectations either go up or they go down. And then sometimes your viewing experience is affected by those expectations. So when the expectations are real low, the movie can become better. And when you walk into a film with your expectations super high, sometimes the movie can disappoint. Well, I didn't see Oppenheimer. I heard you talking about it. You obviously saw it before it was released. Then it got released. Then everybody was talking about it. I heard you talking about it in the Geek Buddies. And me being a slowpoke and sometimes lazy, took about a week before I got to the theater to see it. And needless to say, this did not disappoint. My high expectations were met and exceeded. And I can so remember having that experience, which I've had a few times in a movie theater, where I went, oh, this is a film. Like, this is a director who knows what they're doing. This is an artist taking me somewhere. Like, just feeling so... Not that I knew where we were going to go, but comfortable that the director knew where we were going, and that it is a movie that I have now watched many times.
Yeah.
And with every viewing, it gets better. It really does.
And this is one of those films where you want to show it to everybody. The Lady Outlaw does not go to movies. She does not go to movies. But when I showed her the trailer for this one after I'd seen it, she was in, and it was my pleasure to take her to see it. And she was engrossed in this movie. That's a 3-hour film, and goes to the places that it goes because it's so incredibly well made. And there are movies that once you watch them, like you just know immediately this is a Best Picture winner. Like it will take a lot to defeat this movie. Right now as we're recording this, I think Project Hail Mary is my choice for Best Picture so far, but I still have The Odyssey, Dune 3, Doomsday, a few other films to see before the end of the year. But like when I saw Oppenheimer, I walked out and go, I don't know that anything's going to beat this thing this year. It is just so perfectly made,
It really is. It's so powerful. And honestly, like, this is going to be a big movie for us to get through. I don't know how many episodes this is going to be.
Yeah.
It is, and I'm just going to say right up front, there are some things that we do in the Cine-Files that are going to happen differently because this movie is so different. So, for instance, we tend to go moment by moment through a film, and we're still going to do that. But I realized something is that the way that we go moment by moment is very much affected by me being an editor. Because what an editor is doing is going, each shot is meant to convey this. It exists here for this reason. And so frequently as I'm doing the play-by-play, that's kind of what I'm doing. Yeah. But Nolan, who was intercutting a lot already, and in the last film we did with Interstellar, has taken it to a whole other level now. There are just constant tens, thousands and thousands of little cuts to things. Yeah. And we're not going to talk about them all. It's just not going to be possible to do so. We really have always tried to make an effort to honor the actors, even actors who are in smaller roles. But the fact is there are so many characters in this movie that we're not going to mention them all. Like it would be impossible to do so. And so that's sort of the first thing. Yeah. The second thing, I wanted to set up right from the beginning an idea that I first heard from David Lean, which is that he defined an epic as the mix of the big and the small, the wide shot and the close-up. And I think Oppenheimer is a perfect example of that, which is that it is a deeply intimate film. It is very much in the close-up, in the personal experience of the two characters really that we're involved with. And it has vast, huge themes, incredible scope, and events that affect the world going forward that we're still feeling today.
And conversations about stuff that we now are dealing with in ways that we hadn't even 3 years ago when this film came out. Some of the stuff that Oppenheimer goes through, some of the questioning that he goes through, some of the stuff going on with the politicians in that security briefing, all of the security hearing. There's so much that goes on in this movie that we're exploring today. And I love that this film is messy. And I don't mean by its technique or its artistic approach. I mean the characters. These are not easily likable characters. Just about everybody in this film has something that is shown as a main character in this film is shown to have some prickly sides to their personality as they confront what they're going to confront. And the film builds. It builds and builds and builds, leading to the explosion, leading to the test, leading to the after effects of the explosion, and then what we see in that security briefing. And it's just so amazing to watch as the film crescendos throughout what happens with all of these characters, and that we're on board with it the whole time.
And you think about all the themes that Nolan is wrestling with. Obviously, the theme of nuclear war and building the bomb and whether or not that's a good thing and what effect it has going forward. It has themes of loyalty versus duty, which is very important in the film. It has, as you just mentioned, it has this idea of national security and what is necessary to protect our national security versus freedom of the speech, expression, and even freedom of thought. This movie really delves into like what is okay, who can be trusted,
and that's what stood out to me watching it this time. And look, you can watch this movie 10 times and focus on 10 different themes, right? For me, it was the free thinking versus groupthink that you see coursing throughout this whole movie, because that's the thing about Oppenheimer. He does not adhere to the way normal people see the world. As you see him confront all the things that he's confronting, from a young man who is essentially suicidal, but also possibly murderous, to a man later on who is like just respected and appreciated for his ability to not see things the way everyone else sees them, and what that all leads to, And so there's so much going on throughout the whole film, and the whole time there is this pulsating feeling of like, well, it's right and nipping at his heels is this idea: we need to conform you, we need to conform you, you need to be conformed. We won't be able to trust you unless we can conform you, which is at times the jealousy of the unintelligent trying to destroy the intelligent, because they know that it reminds them of how unintelligent they are. And so there's elements of that coursing through this as well.
And I'll add one more thing, because I think it is really important. Nolan definitely talks about this, and I think it's something we should consider throughout, which is as Christopher Nolan is making this film, he believes that we are in another Oppenheimer moment.
I mean, when I talk to the leading researchers in the field of AI right now, for example, they literally refer to this right now as their Oppenheimer moment. They're looking to his story to say, okay, what are the responsibilities for scientists?
That we are hearing many of the same arguments about why we shouldn't stop it. We have people predicting really, really dire consequences, and we are not dealing with those things. I don't even know if we're dealing with those things as well as they were dealing with atomic power and atomic weapons in the 40s and 50s, And so this is another theme that is going to go along as we discuss this.
Agreed. Hey, Steve, let's pause our Oppenheimer discussion for a second to talk about another film that may become a modern classic that we may do in the future here on the Cine-Files. It's called The Invite from A24. It's out now in all theaters, and it stars Seth Rogen, Penelope Cruz, Edward Norton, and Olivia Wilde, who is back in the director's chair for this one. And it's getting a lot of great reviews, including from a friend of our show, Shannon McClung, who loved it and thinks that it should get some Oscar nominations in the future.
Well, first of all, the Shannon McClung recommendation has a lot of weight with me. From the moment I saw the trailer, I was excited to see this. It gave me exactly the kind of uncomfortable and intrigued feeling that maybe I would have if I had some interesting invite at some point. I would be very uncomfortable, and part of me would be intrigued.
Yeah, it blends sharp comedy and emotional honesty and a touch of the unexpected. It creates an experience that feels both entertaining and revealing. And aren't some of those the greatest movies that we talk about here on the Cine-Files? So go see The Invite if it's playing in your city and enjoy it. And let us know what you thought about it. All right, let's get back to Oppenheimer, brother.
So a little bit of pre-production. This starts with the book. Obviously, it starts with Robert Oppenheimer, but the process of making it, he was born. But the process of pre-production starts with the book American Prometheus, which came out in 2005, written by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. And it immediately got optioned by Hollywood, and the first director slated to direct was Sam Mendes.
Ooh, that would have been interesting.
It would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But that falls through, and then it does the rounds, and a whole bunch of filmmakers express interest, and then a whole bunch of filmmakers end up not doing it, one of whom, the only name that I got, is someone who was involved in development up to a certain point and then finally turned it down, is Oliver Stone.
Oh, wow.
That would have been an entirely different movie.
I don't think anywhere near as good, yeah.
Producer David Wargo got the option. A whole bunch of scripts were written, I don't know by who, and he brought it to James Woods. Now, I don't know if he brought it to James Woods as a potential actor to play Oppenheimer. I think he would be too old to play it, but it's James Woods that introduced him to producer Charles Roven, who is a producer on Dark Knight and a whole bunch of other Nolan films, and it's Roven who brought it to Christopher Nolan. And David Wargo and James Woods stayed on as executive producers. So James Woods is an executive producer on Oppenheimer, and he was asked not to promote the film due to his politics.
Yeah, and smartly so. I think smartly so, because that would have tainted the film because of how vociferous he is about his points of views. It doesn't mean he's not allowed to express his point of views, but it doesn't mean there isn't consequences either. So I think that's a fair decision, a smart decision. We just saw it happen with Masters of the Universe this year. They asked Jared Leto to not do any promotion for the movie because Jared Leto leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. And so you never saw him anywhere in the promotion for this movie, yet he was arguably the standout role of the movie. So fascinating how that works.
It might very well have been the right choice in terms of publicity to not have James Woods do any promotion. But in a movie that is about people being silenced because of their political beliefs, it's a little bit ironic too, you know?
Yeah. Business is business, you know, that's true.
So Christopher Nolan had first heard of the name Oppenheimer when he was in high school because he heard it in the lyrics of a song. Do you have any guesses what that song might be?
It would have to be It's the End of the World as We Know It, right? The REM song, is that correct? Or no?
Oh, that is a perfect guess, but no, it is not. The lyric is, "How can I save my little boy from Oppenheimer's deadly toy?"
Oh, is that Russians?
Russians by
the
Sting.
song. Yeah, I know that song. Yeah.
I listened to that album over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And he had also heard the story of the non-zero chance of destroying the world long before he read the book. So he was already intrigued. And then, you know, it's so weird how these things happen. But before he signed on to this movie, Robert Pattinson gave him a book of Oppenheimer's speeches. And I don't know if that's before or after he read the book, but things are pulling him in towards Oppenheimer.
Yeah. He gave it to him after they finished shooting Tenet. So, yeah.
And Nolan signs on. And what's funny is, as we discussed in our bio of him, he had spent a whole bunch of time working on a biopic of Howard Hughes at the same time that Scorsese was doing his. And so even though they're not the same characters, they're not the same stories, he had spent a lot of time kind of researching the era and thinking of how he wanted to show this kind of an era. And so that gave him a little bit of a step ahead. He worked very closely with Kai Bird, one of the two writers. Unfortunately, Sherwin, the other writer, he died 2 weeks after Nolan signed on to do the picture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he never got to
that's a
see
shame.
this. Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Nolan wrote the whole script in a couple of months. And I wrote, I hate him. Because there's stories, like, I know there are a lot of scripts where, like, I know that 16 Candles was, like, written in like a weekend or something, you know, but 16 Candles is simple. This movie is not simple. Like, I don't know how the fuck he wrote this in a couple of months.
Oh, God. As soon as you said a couple of months, I knew the comment was coming.
Terrible.
And it's not like that book is not dense. That book is incredibly dense. So to create, you know,
it would take a lot of people a couple of months just to read that book, frankly.
True. Very true.
And then in December 20, Warner Brothers announces that it will give Oppenheimer a simultaneous release on film and on HBO Max. Nolan loses it.
Wow.
And needless to say, this movie is not with Warner Brothers. It is with Universal.
This is what led to the split. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it was a big acrimonious split for sure. Yeah.
The budget for this movie, it just astounds me. We're hearing today of budgets of 150 million, 200 million, 250 million, like these huge budget movies. The budget for Oppenheimer is $100 million, which is a ton of money. I'm not saying that it's not. But for a movie of this scale, that is incredibly impressive.
Yes. And I imagine all of these actors, shall I say this, below the top characters in the movie, you know, were just happy to be a part of it and took whatever they could pay them to be in this film. Because there's a lot of really good actors who barely get 2 scenes in this movie.
I will tell you, yes, they definitely, the only ones I know of are Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr., and Emily Blunt all took pay cuts. But their pay cut was down to $4 million a piece.
Right.
So,
well, I mean the people below them. Those are the main characters. But the other, like Josh Hartnett, like Alex Wolff, like Jack Quaid, all taking way less, I'm sure, to be a part of this. Yeah.
And the other crazy thing, so the movie is originally scheduled to shoot 85 days. But then they looked at their $100 million budget and they realized that they couldn't shoot in 85 days. And so they cut it down to 57 days.
Wow.
And to give you some scale for that, Dunkirk, which is Nolan's shortest film, had a 68-day shoot. Tenet had a 96-day shoot.
Yeah.
He's closer to my film, my tiny independent film, The Assistants, with a $500,000 budget, had a 20-day shoot. They shot Oppenheimer in just like a little, like 2.5 times the amount of time I took to shoot The Assistants. That is so insane. And it shows something we talked about when he did Insomnia, is that he realized that the best weapon he had against the studio was his efficiency. Was that if he wasn't going to cost them extra money or cost them extra days, they'd leave him alone. And there is no better example of filmmaking efficiency than 57 days to shoot the 3-hour-long movie Oppenheimer.
And the crazy, I don't know, and I'm sure you have this in your notes, but Hoyt van Hoytema, who's a cinematographer, said they did no storyboards for this movie. Add that to the equation, that you could shoot it in 57 days, Steve, with no storyboards for this movie. That is madness to me, utter madness.
I mean, we talked about this idea of Christopher Nolan having a map in his head, you know, and so much of his movies are about maps in strange ways of how do you navigate between these different times in Interstellar or levels of the dream or memory going backwards or all these things where it's like Nolan has to keep straight in his head so much stuff. Yeah. And if they shot this without storyboards, the clarity that he had to have in his head, because part of what storyboards do is it's a way of you're communicating with production design, with camera department, with costume. Everybody kind of can look at this is what we're doing. Nolan, if you don't have storyboards, then Nolan is just talking to everybody and getting because if everyone's not on the same page, you don't shoot the movie in 57 days. Everybody has got to be working at the peak of efficiency. Before we get into the film, I know we're going to get there. I wanted to talk a little bit about Oppenheimer before we meet him. And the reason I want to bring this up is that I actually learned a lot about my own family history from reading the book about Robert Oppenheimer and also the book, The Power Broker, the famous book by Robert Caro about Robert Moses. And here's why I bring it up is both Caro and Moses come from families of Jewish immigrants who came to the U.S. in the 1800s, which is when my family came here. And most of them were part of the secular humanist movement from a guy named Felix Adler. They were Reformed Jews who came to the U.S., and they believed in assimilation. They believed that the way to combat anti-Semitism was essentially to appear less Jewish, more American, more mainstream, and to do positive good in the world. They felt the way to not be demonized was to be essentially, a model minority, to do everything possible to contribute in every single way, to be highly educated, highly industrious, and highly charitable. And that is the world that Robert Oppenheimer grew up in. And so they didn't keep kosher. Maybe they went to temple, maybe they didn't. They didn't speak Yiddish in the home. They really focused on education. They really focused on success in terms of industry, and they really focused on philanthropy. And that is very much what my ancestors were. That was the attitudes that they had. So I had a lot of relationship to this. And Oppenheimer, I mean, his dad was a Jewish immigrant, came to the U.S. with nothing. By the time Oppenheimer was born in 1904, they were seriously rich. I mean, he grew up with Rembrandts and Picassos and Van Goghs in his apartment on the Upper East Side. This is not messing around at all. And this guy, Felix Adler, had founded the Ethical Cultural Society, and their philosophy was deed before creed, which means that what's important is doing good, not necessarily what religion you follow. And they created a school, which was the Ethical Cultural Society School, which was a private school. This is where Robert Oppenheimer was sent. And this is basically, it's like the perfect environment for a person with his kind of intellect. He was interested in everything, not just science, although he was definitely interested in that, but he was interested in poetry and art and philosophy. And he was learning Greek, and he was reading ancient literature, and he was studying Shakespeare. Basically, this private wealthy school was one where they just went, oh, you want to learn about this? We'll find you a PhD to teach you that when he's 11 years old. He's like, ravenous for knowledge. And this school was like, we will feed you knowledge as fast as you can take it. Yeah. There's a story in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, about how Bill Gates had access when he was in junior high to a mainframe that most people would kill to have access to. And he used to sneak out of his house because he had a key to the computer lab, and he would go at 2 a.m. to do this. And that is why Malcolm Gladwell says that's part of how he becomes Bill Gates. well, this school is part of how Robert Oppenheimer becomes Robert Oppenheimer.
This is, unfortunately, how our society is constructed is if you have access to wealth, you have access to these upper tiers of organizations, and God love them for creating those things so that they encourage free thinking, because I think it's important to have free thinking in our society. You can find a place to exist, because God knows how many poor people are born into their conditions with free thinking minds, and they have that beaten out of them or shamed out of them because there is no opportunity to find a place to express that, to encourage that. And so this is why it always breaks my heart when I read about yet more educational cuts, yet more educational funding being thrown away, because we need to become more intelligent, not less intelligent. And I wish we had societies like what you're talking about for available to all members of the social strata, so they could, we could grow as a society and explore more things and discover things like he did. Because as you said so well, if you hadn't had that, who knows if Oppenheimer would have become Oppenheimer in the end, So it's a fascinating thing to consider.
Well, this is the thing that people who, come from privileged backgrounds really struggle to look back and see. Like, they see their own accomplishments and it feels like, yeah, I did that. And they don't go like, oh, I had all these advantages and maybe I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have all those things going for me. He gets a full academic scholarship to Harvard, and he refuses it because he feels that he can afford it and that other people could use that scholarship more than he could. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Well, and this to me is one of the key questions of the whole film. And I have a strong opinion about it, but I'll frame it as a question, which is Oppenheimer actually an ethical person? Is he trying to be ethical, which aren't the same thing? Because I think one of the things is you can try to do the right thing and end up doing terrible things. Sure. And whether or not Oppenheimer is a good person, or whether or not, or what his motivations are for doing the things that he does, that's something we're, I think, going to talk about throughout the film.
Yeah, and that's the struggle of his whole history. We're not going to solve it. No matter how much you and I talk about it, we're never going to solve it 100%. Yes, this is the answer, because there are so many conflicting actions and decisions in this man's life. And I think of the scene where he brings the baby over to Hoke and says, we're selfish, we're terrible people. And Hoke says, the fact that selfish and terrible people don't ever admit that they're selfish and terrible. They don't think they're being selfish and terrible. That's the difference, but it doesn't mean that he's absolved for that action. It's just that he's clearly a man who is struggling with so many emotions and feelings and trying to put them in context in what he's doing in his life, and people trying to put normal expectations on a genius, I think, is always an exercise in futility. They just don't see the world the way we do. Regular people do,
Speaking of that, would you like to get into the film?
Oh, wow. All right. It's time to go. Let's do this.
It took us 30 minutes to get there. We hear the music building slowly. We hear rain. We see drops of water on a puddle. We see young Oppenheimer staring into it. And then there is this roar of fire and smoke and building rhythm. This is the explosion of the atomic bomb. And we read on screen, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to man.
This immediately won my heart. One, Cillian Murphy, I have loved as an actor for a long time. He lost even more weight to play this role of J. Robert Oppenheimer. He hadn't really kind of stepped up and been a lead in a bit in a film. And I love that the opening gives you immediately this sense of the internal life of J. Robert Oppenheimer. And then putting that quote up there, I was going to name my child Alexander Prometheus, because Prometheus is my favorite character in mythology, bringing fire to the humans from the gods, sacrificing himself so that the humans could exist because the gods wanted to wipe them out. And so I thought it would be amazing to have a child named Alexander Prometheus Rocha, who would go on to be president and change the world. That was, so when I saw that quote, I'm like, you fucking got me. I'm in on this fucking movie. So I just love the beginning. And then that quote there, amongst the fire, which of course it's symbolized because essentially Oppenheimer will bring fire to humanity through that nuclear bomb.
Well, and we'll be tortured for it.
Yes, we'll be tortured for it.
And we'll be tortured for it. And we're left with this question, which I think hits us right at the beginning of the movie is, was this a good thing? Like, is it good that we got the fire of the gods? Are we better off? So this is Cillian Murphy's, it's his 6th collaboration with Christopher Nolan. Sounds like Nolan just called him out of the blue and said, do you want to play Oppenheimer? And he's like, okay, I guess so. He read extensively on Oppenheimer for his research. He also said he was inspired by one of David Bowie's personas from the 70s.
Oh,
now, David Bowie had several personas during the 70s, so I'm not sure which one that was.
Yeah.
This is also, by the way, this film is shot. There's a lot of IMAX footage in this film.
Yeah.
And when they couldn't use the giant IMAX cameras, they use the much smaller film format of Panavision 65, that's a joke. It's not a small format. That's Lawrence of Arabia. So it's like, it's either Panavision 65 or IMAX. As we're seeing this massive explosion, we are hearing the sound of what sounds like stamping feet. And this is an audio thing that's going to get called back later on. We're not going to know what this is for a long time, but this is one of Nolan's techniques, is he's planting things early, I would say on a subjective level, for the audience.
I think he has grown with his ability to use the oral element, AURAL, of movies. And right off the bat from this movie, he wants you to understand this movie is going to rumble your soul from the beginning. And so there's going to be these audio things that come in and catch you. Then visually, seeing the fire explode across the sky, across the frame, and then that quote, all of it. And of course, leading with the rain, the raindrops, ripples, one thing can cause ripples. There's all kinds of smart foreshadowing that he is doing just from the opening frames here to make you understand what you have bought a ticket to witness.
And then we see something really interesting on the screen. And I think Nolan will put some stuff into this movie that he doesn't expect you to understand. He expects you to think about. We see a title that says, number 1, Fission. And what's interesting about this, so when he wrote the script, he saw it as sort of 2 movies cut together, is that there are essentially 2 perspectives that we're going to see. And this one called Fission is Oppenheimer's. And then we will also have one that's called Fusion, which is Strauss's. And they are both handled really, really differently in terms of filmic technique. Obviously, the Oppenheimer stuff is in color, the Strauss stuff is in black and white, but there's all sorts of other things he's doing as well to differentiate these. And this brings up no, I'm not going to say that yet. And after Fission, the first thing we see is a close-up of an older Robert Oppenheimer. His eyes are closed, and this is shot in IMAX. And one of the ways you can tell is because it's such a big square of film, it ends up, you have a much, much lower depth of field. Depth of field is like how much can be in focus at the same time. So, we've talked about with Citizen Kane and stuff that bright lights and a narrow aperture will give you more depth of field, which is how they get all those deep shots. Obviously, the opposite gets the shallow depth of field where you see things out of focus. Well, the really big film format makes things go out of focus even sooner. And so there's some shots in this movie where literally the nose is in focus and the ears are out of focus. That's shot with that IMAX camera, and frequently it's the IMAX camera right up in someone's face, sometimes we're real close to people.
And I think another way, Steve, you can assure yourself shooting this thing in 57 days, that the IMAX camera can only shoot for so long.
Yeah.
And so you want to nail it. And so the actors themselves had to be super prepared before they walked out onto the set because Nolan was only going to do so many takes per scene. And so that can also speed the time with which you do something. When everyone is on board and dialed in and there's no divas on the set, you can absolutely do a film as quickly as possible because everyone understands the level of importance to give to the film and how much of themselves they need to give in order to accomplish this thing that they're trying to do.
It's like he's the anti-Fincher on some level because Fincher will do like 80 takes. And this is the thing. This is why there isn't one good way to make a film. Fincher is a great director. And he does not do things the way Christopher Nolan does. Clint Eastwood and Christopher Nolan, you show up, you need to get it right on the first or second take. That's what it is, And Fincher is like, we're going to keep going until I'm happy, It's a different way of looking at it.
Dr. Oppenheimer, as we begin, I believe you have a statement to read into the record.
And now we're in one of our key locations, which is, it's known as the Gray Board, because Gray is the name of the guy who's the chair of the board. This is this deposition investigation into Oppenheimer's security clearance. This was not shot on a set. You could easily do this on a set. And it would make sense to do this on a set, because when you're on a set, you can fly out a wall because you have these really big IMAX cameras and you have dollies and things like that. And so it's much, much easier to shoot this whole thing on a set. Christopher Nolan doesn't want it easier. He wants it to feel real. So this is shot in a real dingy office, in a real government office building. It is really, really tight in there. It is hot. It is claustrophobic. It is difficult, hard to move the cameras around. Cillian Murphy said that was how it was for Oppenheimer. They intentionally made it small and shitty so he would feel small, and that's how Cillian felt filming this.
That's as an actor, you know, these outside things really put you in the frame of mind. Again, if you're trying to hit something in 57 days, you want to make the conditions as conducive to hitting that mark as possible. So giving that element of reality and the actors willingly succumbing or giving of themselves to be put in that situation so they can achieve that goal, it's amazing. You know, it's amazing what you can come up with.
I wasn't sure where to bring this up, but one of the things Matt Damon said, and a bunch of the actors said this too, Nolan does not spring for the fancy trailers for all his movie stars. Everybody is in shitty trailers. And what Damon says, and Nolan confirms, is this makes everyone not want to hang out in their shitty trailers, but be on set and be ready to go. So there isn't like call the talent and, you know, oh, Matt Damon's flying in, it'll be 20 minutes. That doesn't happen, you know, because they don't have anywhere fun to hang out other than being on the set ready to go.
And there was that rumor, there was that story that broke, you know, that Nolan doesn't have chairs on sets so that the actors don't sit on them. But spokespeople have pushed back on that. So he does have chairs. He doesn't allow cell phones on the set. And that could be a distracting thing as well. So it makes sense.
Yes, Your Honor.
We're not judges, Doctor.
No.
This idea that this is not a trial is so key to how everything goes down, because your feeling is it's not a trial. That should make it better for Oppenheimer. But what it really is he doesn't have any of the protections of a trial.
Yeah. And Gordon Gray is being played by Tony Goldwyn. Some of you remember him from Scandal. He's currently a series regular on Law and Order. And he's the voice of Hercules in the animated film Hercules, which I hope we do one day on this show. I love that movie.
And Oppenheimer reads from his statement in a very flat voice.
Members of the security board, the so-called derogatory information in your indictment of me cannot be fairly understood except in the context of my life and my work.
And this is what's going to happen throughout the film. What's so interesting about this film is it exists in multiple timelines, not unlike Interstellar or Tenet or any of these other movies. Right. And there is the timeline of this gray board deposition or whatever it is, and that's like middle. That's the middle timeline of what's going on. And then there's the entire sequence from Oppenheimer's education all the way through the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's a timeline. And then, strangely enough, the black and white footage is from the future. That's the farthest forward timeline.
Yeah.
And that's where we're going to cut now to Robert Downey Jr. as Lewis Strauss. How did they do this black and white? Well, they wanted to do, you think, well, they just shoot black and white film. That seems easy enough. Well, they wanted to shoot black and white film on IMAX. Nobody had ever shot black and white film on IMAX. No one manufactures black and white IMAX films. But Christopher Nolan calls up IMAX and says, I want to do this. And Kodak goes, we're going to figure it out how to do it. And so, you know, it's in a whole new process of building a new kind of film, new chemical process. They even had to figure out, because when you develop film in a chemical bath.
Yeah.
And the chemical bath you use to develop IMAX films is sitting in these big drums where they develop the color IMAX films. But you don't use the same chemicals to develop black and white film. Well, they didn't have any other vats. They had nowhere to put it. So they had to build. And then what they had to do is they had to figure out a way, well, how do we switch the chemicals? Because they'd never been considered that they would have to use different kinds for different batches of film. So this was a huge undertaking. And as we go to black and white, we see the number 2 and Fusion. And we hear now commentary on the gray board scene and Oppenheimer's testimony. And this is the thing that Nolan does that's so fascinating, is there's this idea that I've talked about many times of enter late, leave early. Like, we don't want to see the beginnings of scenes and we don't want to see ends of scenes. We want to get to the real thing. Well, what Nolan does, his flashback structure allows him to continually enter late and leave early. Like, we're not going to hear Oppenheimer's whole speech. Now we're going to hear from years later Strauss's description of what happened there.
That's why I like, the foreshadowing again. Fission, starting with Fission, which is an entity divided into 2 or more parts. Right. So we're seeing all these different parts of Oppenheimer's life. And so he's given us, Nolan has given us the taste. The young kid, the kid in the future with this, the man in the future in the security. We haven't gotten to the nuclear stuff yet, but we see the hearing and all of that. So all of these are pieces of Oppenheimer's life. And now we have Fusion, which is bringing it all together to create a new whole. So it's a fascinating thing to start with Fission only for a few minutes and then go right into Fusion as a 2 thing. And so I love that he's just letting us know the approach it's going. The film is working on us as a regular film goer, but it's also working on another level for people who are intelligent enough to understand how he's constructing this movie. It's fascinating.
How long did he testify?
Honestly, I forget.
Does Admiral Strauss forget anything about Robert Oppenheimer?
There's not one piece of truth that comes out of his mouth until the end of the movie when he gets caught. Not one piece of truth.
And we see that he's talking to Alden Ehrenreich, who plays like a Senate aide.
The whole hearing took a month.
An ordeal.
Well, I've only read the transcripts. Who'd want to justify their whole life?
So Strauss is now acting sympathetic to Oppenheimer.
Yes. Yes.
Are they really going to ask about it? It was years ago.
4 years ago.
5.
So he does remember. By the way, seeing Robert Downey Jr. look like this after seeing him, as Iron Man and vital and strong. He says, by the way, when they did, because they shaved his head to recede his hairline, and he said he immediately saw his father. It really freaked him out. But I won't say that it's brave to play this not attractive character. I think it's actually brilliant in terms of a career move for Robert Downey Jr. But he does not look good, No.
Well, listen, a lot of actors are driven to prove themselves. I just watched a clip of Stallone talking about how much he sacrificed doing Copland because studios turned on him for taking less money for Copland because they said in the ignorant, stupid studio logic, well, why would we pay you millions of dollars to do an action film for us if you're going to take less to do a small film? Copland, I think for Mangold, Copland, why would you do that? And I was shocked, right? But Stallone said, I did it because I needed to prove something to myself. And we've heard the stories that Downey Jr. did this because too many people were saying he wasn't a great actor because he was in the Marvel movies. And he wanted to prove something to himself. And damn if he didn't do it in this film and get himself an Oscar for his troubles. So you got to give respect to Robert. And I think if he hadn't done this movie, there's no fucking way he'd be back as Dr. Doom. There's no way. I think he knows. I think he scratched that itch so he can go back more comfortably and play this very challenging role and take on this massive challenge to recreate this role and have people forget his Tony Stark.
It's so amazing, as you said. This cast is incredible. It is so. It's like you've stacked the bench. Of the team with all starters. Yeah. And there's just not a weak moment in any performance throughout the entire movie. It's so good. And what we get is that there's some sort of hearing or something going on with the Senate, with Strauss, and that this committee is going to ask him about it.
Senator Thurman asked me to say not to feel that you're on trial.
Oh, funny, I didn't until you just said that.
Which I love. I love all of his little mannerisms.
Really, Mr. Strauss.
It's Admiral.
Yeah.
And this is one of the key things, is that this is a person who is obsessed with, it's not just that he's obsessed with, he sees the entire world as a battle over status. Yeah. That's how the world works, is there are people who are winning and losing and people getting good attention and bad attention. And that is how power works, and power is what he wants. And I don't think Oppenheimer sees the world as a world of status at all. I mean, that's not what he sees status,
Yeah, I was going to say.
I had to take it back. It's not that he doesn't see status, but he doesn't see the world that Strauss sees.
I don't think he seeks status in the real world.
Yes,
right. He seeks status in his community, whereas Strauss seeks status in the massive rest of the world. Right, even within that community, as we'll see when they're introduced and all of that happens in that scene. Even when Albert walks past him after he tries to greet him, these are these things that he is seen as a lesser than, and it drives him insane to do the things that he does in the movies we discover.
And the way this scene is framed as he's talking to this aide is essentially that the aide is the political expert. He understands what's going on. He understands all the maneuvering, and Strauss does not.
Admiral Strauss, this is a formality. President Eisenhower's asked you to be in his cabinet. Senate really has no choice but to confirm you.
And if they bring up Oppenheimer?
When they bring up Oppenheimer, you answer honestly. No senator can deny you did your duty.
And then we go back to Robert. And I should say something else. So Nolan did another weird thing as he's writing this script. Screenplays have a general way that they're written. They're written in the present tense, and they're, and sometimes you'll have screenwriters. I know William Goldman used to do this, who'll make little jokes in the margins to the director or to the actor and stuff like that. But in general, it's a pretty boring format. Nolan decided to write the fission part of the script, all of the Robert Oppenheimer stuff, in the first person. So that for instance, this is a description of this gray board scene. It is, this is from the script. The room is small, shabby. Surprised, I look up from my statement as the prosecutor, Roger Robb, then turned to the three board members. So it's written in his thought process, which is a very intimate way. And I think Cillian Murphy, at first was like, this is strange, but then it started to make him feel really comfortable because it's essentially like his world, that he's reading through the script.
Well, I think that's the approach as well in terms of the color versus black and white. Strauss's stuff is almost, I think it's exclusively in black and white. Yeah. Why? Because that's how Strauss sees the world. Black and white, status versus not status. Whereas Oppenheimer sees the world much more colorfully, with much more possibilities, torturous at times, but also incredible at times. And so for him, all his stuff is in color. I think that, and I know that's on purpose. And so it's almost like a subtle commentary. You can live your life like this, and this is the kind of drab existence you will have chasing these paper titles. Or you could live a life appreciating what is out there in the world and have a much more colorful life. Yes, messy, yes, tough, yes, difficult, but also much more rewarding by the end. So I think that's a really interesting way to start off this film. And as you watch it throughout, that's what happens.
And by the way, the main antagonist in these scenes is Roger Robb, who's played by Jason Clarke.
Why did you leave the United States?
I wanted to study the new physics.
Was there nowhere here? I thought Berkeley had the leading theoretical physics department.
Yes, once I had built it. But first I had to go to Europe. I went to Cambridge to study under Patrick Blackett.
From Einstein's big theories, 1905 to 1910, that's the first revolution. And then it's Niels Bohr who comes up with this idea of quantum physics, which Einstein doesn't agree with. He says that can't be right. The famous quote from Einstein is, God does not play dice with the universe. But that is what Oppenheimer has gone to Europe to study because it's the only place he can learn this stuff.
Were you happier there than in America?
And I Cillian Murphy is so great in this movie, but I love just the confusion at the question,
Happier?
Yes.
No.
And then we cut to him as a younger man in like a single bed. It's very desaturated. He's very lonely. This, by the way, sounds very accurate to his experience when he showed up at Cambridge. He had a very, very rough time these first 2 years.
For me, this is another way this film got me in the first opening minutes. This is a mental health moment, alone in this bed, clearly unsettled, scared, nervous, not sure if he belongs. There's so much coursing through just what you see here, and this whole sequence of time in the flashback is a lot of the exploration of the tortured mind that he felt as a young man because it was not seasoned yet to understand what his destiny was. So the fact that he toyed with that kind, the possible suicide ideation is not surprising. Feeling out of place can cause that within you.
And I think there's obviously I completely agree, but I also think there's another interesting thing going on. I think his whole conception of the universe is falling to pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's connected to the physics in addition to the homesick, because he says
I was homesick, emotionally immature, troubled by visions of a hidden universe.
And we're intercutting with all of these weird sciencey images. And this happens throughout the film. I will not highlight them throughout the film. But I think they're very important. These are all done in camera. None of this is CG. This is metal balls flying around. This is using magnets. This is all sorts of things in centrifuges, like dropping dust into centrifuges. And it's just experiments. Christopher Nolan, I think, was having a ball as they're doing all these experiments and filming them. And of course, these were shot on IMAX, but IMAX is not used to shoot tiny little close-up macro things. And so they had to build an entirely new lensing system in order to film these things on IMAX. And I really do think, this idea that the universe is not what you think it is, that things that you think are not solid, things you think are solid are not solid, that things you think are predictable are not predictable, that all these things don't work the way we think. I think he's having an existential crisis due to all of that, in addition to everything else.
Yeah. And I think those science moments are great to, non-verbally, by that I mean no words, show you the inner destructions or inner slamming together of elements that are happening inside of his mind and inside of his body, in so many ways.
We see him at a lab as a young man, and he breaks a beaker and is obviously embarrassed.
Christ, Oppenheimer. Have you had any sleep?
That's James D'Arcy, by the way. Again, it's an amazing cast,
Yeah, who is Jarvis in Haley Atwell's Agent Carter. And Jarvis is who Paul Bettany is voicing. That he names Paul Bettany's computer system in Iron Man after that Jarvis. James D'Arcy plays that Jarvis, who is the driver for Tony Stark's dad. So how interesting that the Robert Downey Jr. Marvel connection is here.
Start again.
I need to go to the lecture, sir.
Why?
It's Niels Bohr.
And of course, the professor forgot that this was what was going on and gets everyone going except for Oppenheimer because he has to clean up. And as everyone's leaving, someone leaves a very green apple on the desk of the professor.
Yeah.
By the way, one of the things stylistically that was important to Nolan that he told all the designers is that this is not a documentary. We want this to feel real. It doesn't necessarily have to, dot every I and cross every T. But he wants to create the feeling of this age, which I think he does brilliantly.
I also think it's a smart way to get us on board with him. How many of us can relate to being in a place that we don't feel comfortable, that unsettles us? We feel homesick. Whether it's camp, whether it's college, or whether it's going to your cousin's house for the weekend or for a week or whatever, or being displaced from your home. There's a lot of universality of it. And then seeing him being ridiculed, seeing the professor say to him, "We're all going to go to the lecture, but you're going to stay behind and essentially clean the erasers." So there's a sense of creating an underdog nature to this man of incredible intelligence. And as you told us earlier, who comes from wealth, but you want to get the audience on board. And so to lay the groundwork to make him sort of an underdog here who is struggling to fit in makes us connect to this guy so much right off the bat. And we've already been teased about what's coming, but this is a way to get us on board from the beginning for where we're going with him,
I totally agree. But then Nolan messes with that in the next moment, because in the next moment, after he's cleaning up, he looks into, some case and sees a tiny bottle of potassium cyanide.
Yeah.
He takes it, draws the cyanide into a hypo, and injects it in the professor's apple. I don't know what you're feeling at this point in the movie, but I'm like, we're really early in the movie. I'm like, what the fuck? What's happening?
That moment has always stayed the same for me. It's heartbreak that his mania, his madness, his mental health issues are causing him to make this extreme decision as a way of getting back to this guy or a way of removing this guy from his life because as he said, he's emotionally immature. I'm not approving in any way, shape, or form what he's doing, but I understand because it's essentially intimating that he has these strong mental health issues because he feels tortured by this genius that he can't quite focus on, and this moment is a way of pushing the limits that he's willing to go in his pursuit of this, and it also kind of foreshadows, Steve, his comfortability with death, whether he causes it or not. Because the nuclear bomb is going to cause so many deaths. So I wonder if there's a little bit of foreshadowing here. And of course, the apple always symbolizes knowledge. So I don't know if that's something that's being a part of this as well.
It's so interesting because, as you said, the setup is, he's in he's the underdog. We're in an underdog story. And then when he goes like, wait, is he trying to kill that guy? It's such an extreme response. And I think it really rocks you. And by the way, we said it for 10 years now on the Cine-Files that great films are made in details. That little drop of cyanide dripping down the side of the apple is a fantastic detail.
Yeah.
And after cleaning up, Oppenheimer is running through the rain as we hear the dulcet tones of Niels Bohr with his Danish accent. John, how do you compare Danish Kenneth Branagh to Russian Kenneth Branagh?
I like Danish Branagh. I think this is more in his wheelhouse than the Russian. And it's ironic because one of my favorite shows from him is Wallander, his remake of Wallander, who I think is a Swedish detective, but he does it all with an English accent. So it's interesting to see that he wouldn't try to do the series with a Swedish accent because his Danish is not bad in this movie. I like it.
Einstein's opened the door. Now we are peering through, seeing a world inside our world, a world of energy and paradox that not everyone can accept.
Including Einstein, who didn't accept it.
Right.
So Jack Quaid, who we're going to see later in the movie, who plays Richard Feynman, Feynman had a quote, and this is not exactly what it is, but it was something like, if anybody ever tells you that they understand quantum physics, you tell them that I know more about quantum physics than just about any human on the planet, and I don't understand it.
Well, then I need to talk to my high school professor because I got a C in quantum physics, and I think I should have gotten an A then.
Wait, you took quantum physics in high school or just physics?
I took physics, and I was terrible at physics, for God's sakes. I couldn't understand anything that was happening.
I was okay with physics when it got to like relativity and quantum physics. It's like, no, I'm out.
I'll tell you a story about physics in my high school. I'm not going to name my high school, but I'll tell you, this is actually what happened, Steve. This is no bullshit. Our professor or our teacher was so old and wanted to keep his job that he would leave the classroom during our tests so we could cheat off of each other to get decent grades in his class. Every single test. He'd make it seem like he was going to be there in the room. Then he would leave the room. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to say the high school, but I still ended up getting a C because I really didn't understand what the hell was going on. But yeah, we were sharing tests. We were sharing things. It's the only class I ever got a C in high school, man. And I was so mad about it, But yeah, it was, I didn't learn a damn thing in that class. Not a damn thing.
And one thing we see at the end of the lecture is that Robert raises his hands, and then we have more science-y images as Robert sits in his bed thinking, swirling energy everywhere, and his brain goes to when he was at a campfire, and we see a horse, and the horse eats an apple out of his hand. Basically, you can see in his face as his eyes open up, and he goes, "Oh shit, the apple!" And he runs back to the classroom, and there he sees his professor talking to someone whose back is to us.
Niels, meet J. Robert Oppenheimer.
What's the J stand for?
Nothing, apparently.
It does, in fact, stand for Julius, but he didn't like Julius.
You were at my lecture. You asked the only good question.
No one's denying his insight.
It's his laboratory work that leaves a little to be desired.
I heard you give the same
At Harvard, yes, and you asked the same question. Why ask again?
I'd like your answer.
I think that is an amazing thing to say to someone who you clearly idolize.
Yeah, and Branagh, again, because he's a great actor, does a nice little micro emotion where he's a bit taken aback that he would say that to him, which is great to see. It's good acting, listening to each other. I like that he's kind of taking, I don't know if he has respect for him for pushing back on him, but, it's a little bit of a, whoa, okay. Yeah, I'd like my answer now.
Did you like it better yesterday?
A lot.
Because what I think it is that Oppenheimer hadn't quite gotten his head around what Bohr was saying when he asked the question at Harvard. And now he's starting to get his head around what this craziness of quantum theory is.
You can lift the stone without being ready for the snake that's revealed. Now it seems you're ready.
So that is a line that's going to come back later in the movie.
Okay.
And this is thematic to the whole film, really, is that once you have the knowledge, it exists in the world. And the knowledge of the atom and the power that could come from the atom, once we know about it, we can't not know about it.
But you don't enjoy the lab? So get out of Cambridge with its beakers and potions. Go somewhere they'll let you think.
And he tells him to go to this University of Germany, and he's going to send a recommendation for him. And I mean, this is a hell of a setup he's getting. And what I should say is that the other thing that's going on in this scene is that Niels Bohr has picked up the apple.
Yeah.
And is holding it this whole time he's talking. And so even though without that, the scene is still a great scene. It's very interesting. It's well written. It's well acted. But with the apple, it's like, oh shit, he's going to kill Niels Bohr.
But this is, again, smart filmmaking, isn't it? How do you make an exchange between these scientists, which could be utterly boring? How do you make it interesting? Well, first you cast really good actors. Then second, you throw this element of tension throughout, that he could at some point bite into that apple and die. So it keeps you kind of like on the edge, you know, kind of the way Oppenheimer is throughout this whole beginning of his life. You know?
And at the end of Bohr is essentially said, I'm going to pave your way to learn exactly the science you want. Niels Bohr has given Oppenheimer everything he desires. He is lifting up that apple like he's about to take a bite. And Oppenheimer snakes in and grabs that thing and throws it immediately in the trash. And they're shocked by this behavior. Yeah. And he says,
wormhole.
which is a great excuse of why you throw away the apple, and B, we just talked about Interstellar. That's all about wormholes. Yeah. And Kip Thorne, the science advisor on both Interstellar and on Oppenheimer, that's his specialty, is wormholes,
Nice.
So let's talk about this event with the apple. Did it happen or did it not happen? So what a lot of people, Oppenheimer was 100% going through serious mental health struggles in his first couple of years, particularly when he was at Cambridge. He had massive mood swings. He had crippling depression and had what sound like some real issues with reality. Like knowing what is real around him. There's one story where a student found him standing in front of a blackboard, staring at it, seemingly like frozen and in some kind of a fugue state, just repeating, the point is, the point is, the point is, the point is. Yeah. There's another story that Oppenheimer told this story. He said he was on a train and he's in a compartment and it's just him and this young couple who are essentially, public displays of affection. They're like making out. And he's just sat there in silence. And then this is what the story that he told, is that the man got up and left. And that he, when he was alone with the woman, got up, walked across the compartment, grabbed her and kissed her.
Whoa.
And he says that she wasn't surprised, but she didn't accept his advances. He was filled completely with shame by this action. The man came back. The train got to the station. He's out on like a bridge, like a little overpass in the train station with his suitcase, sees this couple below him and decides to drop the heavy trunk on the woman to kill her.
Whoa!
And he says that he dropped it, but fortunately missed, and it just hit the ground.
God.
His friends who he told this story to, they don't think any of this happened. They think this is all made up. What they think there was an incident with the apple. His friends don't think it was cyanide. They think it was some other thing that might have made the professor sick. They don't think there was really an attempt to kill this professor, but this did happen. He was almost expelled.
Yeah.
He was suicidal or suicidal ideation for some time, and he was bouncing from psychiatrist to psychiatrist, both in London and in Paris, sometimes in good ways, sometimes in not good ways. But somewhere along the line, he got a handle on this, you know?
Yeah.
And really found out who he was.
Well, it can happen, right? We saw that with John Nash, right? That he ends up figuring out how to live with this stuff and function within this stuff. And I think sometimes mental health is born from a place of frustration where you're so unsatisfied with your life and where you're going and what's happening that this is when it manifests itself as a way of punishing yourself. Now, I think his was certainly on the spectrum because this idea of wanting to take lives, people's lives in a moment of anger or frustration or jealousy, perhaps, is really way out there. And if he had accomplished either one of these things, the apple or the dropping of the suitcase, we would not know Oppenheimer as we know now, right? I mean, we'd have lost one of the greatest scientific minds ever. And so he clearly had to grow up into how to handle that emotion and find some maturity within himself. So yeah, it's intense.
I think I can't help just continuing to believe that big part of this is the quantum physics, is the just dawning realization that reality is not real, that the universe that we perceive around us is not the universe. This isn't what, like that's going to, and now you go like, well, if the reality isn't real the way I thought it, is there right and wrong? Does it mean is there sin? Does it mean anything to kill a human? Like, what does everything mean?
Well, that's what I mean by being on the spectrum, right? I mean, like this, I'm going to make a connection to this, and maybe the first time ever anyone's done this, but like, I watch Young Sheldon. I do not watch Big Bang Theory because I think that's a bunch, I think it's a joke, that show. But Young Sheldon is very interesting to watch this young, it is really deceptively well written, to watch this young kid navigate the world in Texas with people who have no idea of his genius, like really an understanding of his genius. And there are moments where he is actually trying to figure out why human beings do the things they do and why they worry about each other's emotions and value each other and their lives. There's a lot of that in Young Sheldon, which is all played for jokes, but underneath it all is a legitimate like reflection of how some people on the spectrum do view human beings. They don't necessarily view people as human beings. They can remove that humanity and element to that, but it isn't in a way that is hateful. It is more in a way of like fascination. And so I think there's elements of this that are being shown in the beginnings of this movie.
Now I'm picturing a sitcom called Young Oppie. It's gonna be great.
He keeps trying to kill everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. I mean, I had a moment like this when I was reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance for the first time. And there's a lot in that movie where it really exposes the constructs of society and that we're all behaving in this way for these rules, but we don't need to. There's nothing forcing us to behave. And I was going through a rough time in my life at that moment. I had a really shitty job that I really wasn't happy with. And I remember having a moment where I was like, oh, I could just leave. I could kick that door down. Nothing means anything. I had this sort of, everything fell apart for a while,
Yeah, it happens for sure.
How's your mathematics?
Not good enough for the physicist he wants to be.
Algebra's like sheet music. The important thing isn't can you read music, it's can you hear it. Can you hear the music, Robert?
Yes, I can.
It's a great moment.
I thought of John Lennon when I was watching it again, right? Because he couldn't read sheet music, but John understood what to play and when to play it and how to hear it,
Yep. And now we're moving through the clouds and the mountains, and the score, by the way, it's just incredible throughout.
Phenomenal.
And it's not just that it's incredible throughout. I haven't checked, but this movie is almost wall-to-wall music. Like it is almost constant. There are a few times where it drops out, but not many.
Yeah, wall-to-wall music or sound, for sure. Yeah.
And just like we said with Hans Zimmer on Interstellar with the organ and the short story he gave him, with a new movie now, Christopher Nolan changes his process. And so he did different things. I don't have as much detail on what he did. I know that he wanted the violin to be the theme for Oppenheimer, but they were definitely going back and forth and again, experiments, including showing the composer all the things they were playing with these abstract science images, which the composer found really inspiring in terms of the sound of the film.
Yeah.
And we're in a montage of Robert looking at the stars. He's at the university. He's in class. He's in a church. He's looking at abstract paintings, including Picasso. He's reading T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. And in particular, this Picasso painting, which is Woman Sitting with Crossed Arms, which is a painting from 1937. What's interesting about looking at the Picasso painting, do you know the Steve Martin play Picasso at La Pinagile?
No, I only know Shop Girl from Steve Martin.
So it's a great play, and it is the story of a fictitious meeting in like 1912 between Picasso and Einstein. And at some point, Elvis shows up later in the movie, but in the play. But what's so great at what Steve Martin's idea is that both of these things in art and in science are destructions of the normal universe. Is that Picasso tears apart the visual world in his art, and Einstein tears apart the scientific world. And so the fact that he's looking at Picasso, I think, is really key. And reading T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which is not really a happy book, also is a real key thing. And now we're back in the black and white image where Admiral Strauss is at the Senate hearing.
I'm interested in your relationship with Dr. J. Robert Oppenheimer. You met him in 1947?
Correct.
You were commissioner of the Atomic Energy Commission?
I was, but I actually met Robert in my capacity as board member of the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton.
Which, by the way, the Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton sounds like a real cool place, particularly after Oppenheimer took over, because he brought in poets and artists and philosophers and scientists. And it was like, the A-team of intellectual places where everyone was sort of coming together.
Right.
After the war, he was world-renowned, the great man of physics, and I was determined to get him to run the institute.
And now we see Strauss, who's younger, go out to greet a younger Robert Oppenheimer getting out of a cab.
Dr. Oppenheimer, an honor. Mr. Strauss.
It's pronounced Strauss.
Oppenheimer, whatever way you say it, they know I'm Jewish.
So what do you think of this exchange?
I think of Young Frankenstein. It's pronounced Igor. It's pronounced Igor or Frankenstein. But I do think this is a character. So this character beats are so important when I'm watching a movie, right? Strauss is running down the steps. There is a sense of willingly surrendering power. And these are little things that you see actors do. And some people who listen to our show think I'm crazy when I say this stuff, but I know actors and I know what they're doing and I know what directors are telling these actors to do. And so when you're watching these moments, these are little character beats that work on you in a subconscious way. You might not notice them. I mean, I notice them because I watch actors all the time, but you might not notice them. But they're little things that show you who is in power in that situation. He almost runs down like a child to the taxi, and Oppenheimer gets out his back to him, then turns with the pipe, the long coat. He is in power. He is almost like Vader with the cloak. He has the power, and Strauss running up to him is almost like one of those lieutenants on the Death Star, and there's a difference in how you see that. And immediately Oppenheimer has the power in this situation. He is a different person. So we who just watched the scared, frustrated, possibly murderous kid, here he is in a completely different energy, and we know he's going to get there. So it's an interesting thing to watch.
I think this Strauss, Oppenheimer thing is such a dick move on Oppenheimer's part. And this is a film that deals with anti-Semitism in the fight against the Nazis, and our two protagonists are two Jewish men, very, very different. And so what Oppenheimer just said is he said, "Oh, I know you changed the pronunciation of your name to sound less Jewish." Now, I don't know if Strauss is the Southern pronunciation or if that, in fact, he did change it. But it is real insulting right from the beginning. And in particular, with what Strauss says back. He says,
I'm president of Temple Emmanuel in Manhattan. Strauss is just the Southern pronunciation.
Strauss is far more openly Jewish than Oppenheimer is. And yet he's already gone at him. I mean, can you imagine, like, if someone came to you and, made some comment about how you were trying to hide your Latino-ness?
Oh, I've had that. Because,
I'm sure you have.
Because people pronounce it Rocha. That's the natural pronunciation of my last name, but I changed it because in high school I was constantly called Roach, and I hated. I was bullied with that name, so I worked hard to change it to Rocha, which is a version of Rocha, which is a rock, and so I purposely do that. But people who know Spanish or know Portuguese, because Rocha is essentially from Roche, which is Portuguese, they will absolutely give me a side eye sometimes in the way I pronounce it, especially here in California. I've had quite a few nurses when I've gone to the med, like give me the side eye when I tell them how to pronounce my last name, Latino nurses. And so, yes, I've experienced this. But I wonder, Steve, if this is, Oppenheimer has done his research on Strauss. And so this is almost like a necessary evil that he has to deal with him in the position that he's in right now. And I wonder if he's taken him down a peg. Either way, it's a dick move, right? And you know this. There are some people who make a big deal of their ethnicity or religion or last name or their heritage or whatever to show off, but like they're using it rather than actually praising it. And I wonder if Oppenheimer sees Strauss in this way, that he sees him as a performative Jewish person, not necessarily an actual, like a person who respects his Jewish faith. I don't know, but it's an interesting exchange.
And Oppenheimer's not religious. I mean,
right.
Strauss is the president of the temple. Oppenheimer is not. And I also, I have no idea. It could very well be that Oppenheimer did all of his research, knew exactly who this guy was, and had a plan to take him down right from the beginning. Yeah. That's not my sense of him. Is that he's has never considered Strauss. Like Strauss is so beneath him,
maybe,
and the thing too is he doesn't know how goddamn fucking sensitive this guy is, because that line, I mean, even without the hat thing, this has already upset Admiral Strauss. Mm-hmm. And right now he's showing him around. He's showing him the beautiful campus, the great house he's going to get. It's obvious, by the way, I don't know if Oppenheimer did research on Strauss, but Strauss certainly researched Oppenheimer and knows everything.
Yes.
I'm a great admirer of your work.
You're a physicist by training, Mr. Strauss?
I'm sorry, common room, 4 o'clock tea. No, I'm not trained in physics or anything else. I'm a self-made man.
I think that Strauss has used that self-made man thing a lot. He takes a lot of pride in that self-made man thing. As he should, by the way.
Whether it's true or not.
From what little research I did on Strauss, he did make he did start as a shoe salesman and become quite wealthy. So to some degree, it's true. He certainly didn't come from money like Oppenheimer.
No, you're right about that. I just don't. Yeah. I don't believe in anybody being self-made. But yes.
Oh, sure, but but that's another conversation.
Yes, for sure.
I can relate to that.
Really?
Yes, my father was one.
Which is true. And we look out the window. By the way, they might be in Einstein's actual office on the Princeton Institute. I'm not 100% sure of it, but because Einstein's office has been preserved from how it looked when he occupied it, whereas the actual office that Oppenheimer has been modernized. Yeah. So they might be in Einstein's. And speaking of which, they look out the window and they see him by the water.
I'm told he's there most afternoons. I've always wondered why you didn't involve him in the Manhattan Project.
Oh, man. What business is it of yours to ask that fucking question? I think this is what I think Strauss is a guy who wants access to this power and has never been good enough to have access to this intelligence, this knowledge. And he's always a guy knocking on the outside of the door because he can't accept. Well, it's not that he can't accept. I think he secretly knows it. But he's achieved all this other stuff, and he wants the respect from the people that he can't be a part of. It's a fascinating character, this guy in the movie, But he makes these little familiar. I mean, he just met him. What are you doing asking him why Einstein wasn't on this project? What business is that of yours? I think it's a massive faux pas on his part in this moment.
Well, and I also think it reveals the way Strauss sees the world, because he says,
greatest scientific mind of our time.
Because to him, everything is about status.
Yes.
He doesn't understand physics or know what Einstein is good at or not good at. It's just Einstein's number one. Why wouldn't you have number one?
Of his time. Einstein published his theory of relativity more than 40 years ago now. But never embraced the quantum world it revealed.
God doesn't play dice.
So he knows the quote.
But him correcting Strauss in that moment, Rob, because he's saying, Strauss, rather, the way he says it, he's like, no, of his time. And basically saying, I am the mind of this time.
Right.
You know, and that's, again, these little back and forth between these guys. Immediately, they were just, you know, on edge with each other.
I never thought of studying physics formally, Mr. Strauss. I had offers, but I chose to sell shoes. Lewis Strauss was once a lowly shoe salesman. No, just a shoe salesman.
I think that's amazing.
This is men. This is men dick measuring in a slightly intellectual way. I think Oppenheimer is much smarter, obviously, but he's still not above taking shots. I mean, saying lowly shoe salesman is an attempt to denigrate him, and him pushing back saying shoe salesman. It's just like general. I'm general. This, you know. It's so these what he did to Alden Ehrenreich's character, right? So it's these little moments where you see men dick measuring all the time. Even the great minds can sometimes fall into these very primal and at times, for me, kind of dumb exchanges, you know.
By the way, and as Strauss would do, I will say it is admiral, not general. And
yes, sorry,
he is in fact a rear admiral because of one of those during World War II. He was, I forget what he was doing, but he was attached to the military and given an honorary rank, but it is a real rank, you know. So he never served, but technically he is an admiral, and of course he's going to use that everywhere he goes.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, you know, Oppenheimer's a rich dude from an extremely privileged background. Might be the thing I hate the most that he says. I mean, he did drop a couple of atomic bombs, but like lowly shoe salesman is just so insulting. It just really pisses me off. There is nothing wrong. There's nothing lowly about shoe salesman except for the position you have to be in to help people put their shoes on. Other than that, it's as reasonable profession as anything else.
But I think he doesn't like him. So he feels he can, right?
Yeah, he doesn't like him.
Just chip at him.
Yeah. And again, Strauss is trying to take some status, to have some power in this situation.
I'd love to introduce you. No need. I've known him for years.
And Oppenheimer walks off. And now we're in Strauss's perspective as he watches Robert walk out to Albert Einstein. You can see basically everything transpiring on Robert Downey Jr.'s face. Like the performance and reaction is so great. And we see something very distinctive, which is the gust of wind blows the hat off Albert Einstein's head. Robert picks it up and brings it to him. Strauss is walking towards them near this lake, and Albert starts walking towards Strauss, and he says,
Albert.
And Albert Einstein doesn't even look at him, walks past him, very serious look on his face, and Strauss is immediately upset.
What was that? What did you say to him? Oh, he's fine.
Would you like to know what Robert Downey Jr. describes this scene as?
Oh, sure. Yes.
He says this is the rosebud of the movie.
Oh, right. Yes. Because we are left in a mystery until the end, until near the end. Yes.
Well, and it's the center. This is also the center of Strauss's motivation, is his misunderstanding of what this incident is the whole, nothing happens without this moment, you know?
Because of his shit.
Yes.
He is so insecure about his intelligence compared to these men that he wants to work with and employ and put in his institute. But he can't hold a candle to these men intellectually in the fields that they can. And so he naturally assumes, because of the way he is, and we've seen him already correcting people, pushing back on Oppenheimer when he tries to denigrate him as a lowly shoe salesman. You know, this is all about, as you said earlier, Steve, status. And not just status as title, but respect. And he sees disrespect in this moment, and it leads to him having an enmity towards Oppenheimer for the rest of his life.
You know what part of it is Strauss wants to be a great man like Albert Einstein and J. Robert Oppenheimer. That's what he wants to be. But what he doesn't seem to get is that Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer, they accomplish great things.
Yes.
They are great men because of what they did. They're not great men because someone gave them the title of admiral. That's not the thing. It's what they did.
I agree.
Mr. Strauss, there are things in my past you ought to be aware of.
Well, as chairman of the AEC, I have access to your security file. I've read it.
So him reading the security file, again, that's where the whole movie is going to go. Because he was given access to the security file, he has the weapons that he will later use to destroy Oppenheimer, even though at this time he says...
Why would I be worried after everything you've done for your country?
Well, times change, Mr. Strauss.
Well, the purpose of this institute is to provide a haven for independent minds. That's you. You are the man for the job.
Oppenheimer's still not going to give him much satisfaction. He's not going to say thank you to the guy. He's not going to say, sounds like a great job. I appreciate, he's not going to say any of those things.
Well, then I'll consider it. I'll see you at the AAC meeting tomorrow.
And he starts to walk away.
This is one of the most prestigious appointments in the country.
Yes, with a great commute. That's why I'm considering it.
It's such a dressing down.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of low-key admire it, but I know it's not the best way to deal with people. But it's such a dressing down because I think we as the audience, because we've been introduced to Oppenheimer first and we've been introduced to him in a deficit. And by that, I mean his mental health issues, his struggles as a young man, which you see in flashback. We are on his side. Strauss is definitely presented to us as someone who is slightly a poser, a bit of a poser. And so having him say that at the end there, you can see that Strauss is fuming that Oppenheimer would just consider it as opposed to immediately saying yes. And so it's an interest. We've set up our antagonist and protagonist in this sequence, which is great.
Would you like to know what relationship in a film Christopher Nolan was thinking about as he was writing Oppenheimer and Strauss?
Sure. Tell me.
It is a movie we're going to be redoing in the fall.
Oh, Amadeus. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So Salieri being Strauss and obviously Oppenheimer being Amadeus. Wow.
Yep. And they're not the same. I mean, Salieri is a far better composer than Strauss is a physicist.
Right.
But there's still that feeling of the wanting to be like this person and not getting the thing from the genius, that you want.
It's the frustration of being outside the door. You know things are going on in that room, but no one will let you in. And no matter what you do with your talent or your abilities or your creations, you can't get through the door. And that's a frustrating place to be in, I'm sure.
By the way, Robert Downey Jr. felt that he was really not just that they were documenting history, but that he felt like a part of history in playing this part and making this film.
So Dr. Oppenheimer brought your attention to his past associations before you appointed him.
Yes.
And they didn't concern you?
Just then I was entirely consumed with what he must have said to Einstein to sour him on me.
And everyone laughs. But it's not funny. This is not a joke for Strauss.
Yeah.
But later?
Well, we all know what happened later.
And this is this amazing technique is that then we go back in time. We've leapt forward in time and now we go back in time to Robert testifying. By the way, we see Emily Blunt sitting behind him.
Doctor, your time in Europe, you seem to meet with a wide range of other countries' physicists.
Yes, that's right.
Any Russians?
None that spring to mind.
I like Jason. I love Jason Clarke. I got a chance to interview him on my channel last year for earlier this year for his Apple TV show that he had. Didn't get a second season, but he was so much fun. Spent 10 minutes with him talking. I like he has this old school 1950s energy to him when he wants it. For example, he played Ted Kennedy in the Chappaquiddick film, and he was in the show Brotherhood where he played it was essentially a version of what we see in Black Mass with Whitey Bulger and his brother, who is a state senator. It's essentially that with him and Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs is the criminal. Jason Clarke is more the straight-laced guy. And so he has this nice kind of old school energy. And so here he looks like someone from the 1950s who had that, or late 40s maybe, who had that kind of like almost Kennedy-esque type of thing, but on the other side. And I like that energy that he brings here and the poking and prodding at Oppenheimer. And in a lot of ways, it's a version of Strauss, that going back and forth at him and unsettling him and trying to undercut everything he's doing. So I love that as a energy there in the film.
What I think so great about his performance, and I don't know if this was part of his intention or how it got edited or just kind of what it was in the script, is that he builds over the course of the movie, that by the time when he's sliding his chair closer, it's a whole other thing that he's going to bring.
Yeah.
We're in another lecture hall, and there's a heavyset man who comes in and sits down, and this is David Krumholtz, who's playing Isidore Robbie.
This is the greatest performance of his career, in my opinion. And this is where he becomes the Ron Silver of our generation. Even the voice is very Ron Silver-esh, for those of you who remember Ron Silver from back in the 80s and 90s. And I love David Krumholtz. I like this stage that he's in. I thought he was great in Supergirl. And this is a guy that I want to know. The younger Krumholtz, I was kind of on the fence about. Numbers, the Santa Claus, these kinds of things. But who he is now, this is an incredibly interesting energy when you watch him on screen. And I think he steals every scene he's in.
He's great. I agree. And I think he delivers a really necessary warmth to a movie that doesn't have any warmth. I mean, like, Kitty is a great character, but she's not. And Jean, Jean is exciting, but not warm. Like, there's not a lot of, you're not getting, from Teller any real like warm hugs either. It's like he's the one person that actually seems to care about Oppenheimer in a different way. And we see that Oppenheimer is actually up on the stand about to deliver the lecture.
Hey, Yank, lecturing on the new physics. This I have to hear. I'm an American myself.
The guy's talking goes, how surprising.
Americans don't really know how much we can be hated. We can absolutely be hated around the world.
Let me know if you need any help with the English.
And then there's kind of a pause as Oppenheimer gets ready to speak. And then he starts speaking in Dutch. Which, again, this is really true. He really did learn Dutch in like a few months. And was giving Oppenheimer, real smart. Like, that's a really, really smart guy. We're on the train later, and Robbie comes in and offers him food, which is something he's going to do later on in the film, as well.
I want you to talk me through this scene. And I want you to talk me through this scene because if I'm not stepping on any toes, it feels like a very overtly Jewish scene.
You want me to Jewish? You want me to Jewish translate this scene?
Yes,
absolutely.
Jewish translate. Because I love the scene. I think it's very warm, and I feel like I understand it. But I want you, as a Jewish person, to explain what's going on between these two Jews as they're discussing their approach to Judaism along with their approach to science.
I will do exactly that.
We're a couple of New York Jews. How do you know Dutch?
Well, I thought I'd better learn it when I got here this semester.
You learned enough Dutch in 6 weeks to get a lecture on quantum mechanics.
I wanted to challenge myself.
Which, first of all, is, ridiculous.
Yeah. Quantum physics wasn't challenging enough, Schwitzer.
And Oppenheimer repeats it, obviously not knowing the Yiddish word.
Yeah.
And which means, by the way, show off. That is what it means in Yiddish.
Show off. Dutch in 6 weeks, but you never learn Yiddish.
They don't speak it so much my side of the park.
Screw you.
So
yes.
This is, remember the thing I said about the community that Oppenheimer grew up in, and this secular society founded by Felix Adler, and that they made the conscious choice that there would be no Yiddish in the home, that they wouldn't speak Hebrew, they wouldn't keep kosher. And then what happened was, so that's the generation of mostly German Jews. And this is, like I said, this is my family too. My family came to the U.S. between 1830 and 1880. All of them, every one of my ancestors came before the turn of the century. The next wave of Jewish immigration was Eastern Europe, conservative and Orthodox Jews, who came in mostly speaking Yiddish. And so if you think of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and you think of like the Lower East Side and the garment workers and all that, that's where Robbie's from. That's what his generation came in. And Oppenheimer's generation looked down on these Jewish immigrants, and they created something called the Settlement House. And I grew up in my mom's house. There is the Settlement House cookbook, which have some lovely recipes in it. What I learned, and this is more in the book on Robert Moses, but it's the same society. They were part of the same groups, their families. And Robert Moses' family was extremely wealthy Jewish family living on the Upper East Side. So
there's elements of this in the Latino community as well. My parents, when they came over, it was all about assimilating. The 1960s. My mom and my dad assimilated into American society, tried to learn English quickly. And even when I was born, my parents did not want me to have a Spanish accent to my English. So they, as I've said before, I think on the show, they've sat me down in front of a television to watch TV shows to learn how to speak English without an accent. And I think that's one of the reasons I sometimes can do accents, because I watch the different accents in English, watching them. So that was what they want. But of course, the next generation of immigrants who came through from Latino countries very much cherished their heritage. And that's when you started to see like Spanish become the second, unofficial second language of the United States in a lot of areas, because they're like, well, we're not going to necessarily learn the language, and you're going to have to acquiesce to, we're spending our money. You're going to have to create space for us. And so my parents would never do that. And they at times did not like the newer wave of immigrants who came in and were trying to make Americans come to them. They felt, well, they're open their country to you, you should come to them. So there's elements of what you're talking about in looking at my experience as well, you know. So it's interesting. I didn't know it existed in the Jewish community. That's interesting to me. Yeah.
Well, I didn't understand it because like I said, you know, like I knew what my family was like, not terribly religious. I grew up celebrating Christmas, you know, I'm very curious because I know Mike Vogel grew up celebrating Christmas. I don't know if his family came from this generation. But so back to this thing called the Settlement House. So I had seen this thing, the Settlement House Cookbook, but I didn't know what the Settlement House was. It was a charitable organization established by these wealthy Jews to give assistance to the Jewish immigrants that were coming into the country. They provided social services for them, education, meeting places, and things like cookbooks. And the cookbooks were very much like, don't cook that smelly food from the old country. So Settlement House was like, on one sense, it was a lovely charitable institution, but its purpose was to do exactly what your parents were trying to do.
Yes.
Which is, because remember what I said about what the philosophy, their way of fighting anti-Semitism was to be perfect, to be the model minority, well-educated, extremely charitable, extremely hardworking, and not look strange. And then this flood of new Jewish immigrants came in that didn't reflect that. And so they went, let's help these people out. Now, it is helping. And it is also, you know, it's like you could see exactly, I mean, you have this exact experience of, is it helping or is it saying stop being so Jewish? Which it was.
Right. It could be taken as erasure. That's absolutely true, Steve. You're so right. Yeah. And my mom did the same. She tried to cook as much American meals as possible. And I remember growing up as a kid, people were like, well, what do you eat at your home? Your parents are Bolivian. What are the Bolivian dishes you get? And I was like, I don't know. We eat the same things American people eat. Hamburgers, chicken breasts, rice, lentil. The only thing my mom would cook that was Spanish in terms of its origin, or Latino in terms of its origin, was tongue, lengua, as we called it. And so that was the only thing I could ever say to people that my mom cooked specifically that was a Latino dish. So yeah, it was all about assimilation. So it's fascinating that I didn't even know that existed in the Jewish community. Because I mean, I've always met Jewish people who were very proud of their Jewish heritage and their Jewish beginnings. So it's interesting to see that there was an element of like trying to assimilate, not necessarily stand out. So fascinating.
Well, I mean, this is why it becomes so ridiculous when people go like, oh, the Latino people will do this. And it's like, no. Like, some of them will.
You homesick?
Oh, you know it.
Ever get the feeling our kind isn't entirely welcome here?
Physicists? That's a good joke.
It's funny.
Not in the department.
They're all Jewish, too. This is German you have to seek out.
Heisenberg.
Right.
Maybe they need to get some meth, because I hear Heisenberg cooks the best meth.
Nice Breaking Bad reference there.
Well, and what's so funny is like, that is who he was referencing, is this scientist, you know, who was a German scientist working for the Nazis. And what's interesting is it's sort of a year after Oppenheimer is in Europe that he finally starts to stabilize. He finds out who he is, who he's supposed to be. And it seems like to some degree, the idea of Oppenheimer, this person, is very self-created. Like, he very much did figure out what his look would be. And he became almost kind of a rock star. He was obviously brilliant and Oppenheimer has this sort of fascinating charisma, I think. When he's reading the prepared statement, it's basically at zero, the charisma.
Yeah.
But when he turns it on, he has powerful charisma, which is true of the real Oppenheimer. And it's in Europe that he really started to find who he could be,
One might be led to the presumption that behind the quantum world, there still hides a real world in which causality holds, but such speculations seem to us, to say it explicitly, fruitless.
It's like that Feynman quote. Our heads will never get around how quantum physics work. It's just really that things teleport. There's the Schrodinger's cat that is both dead or alive. Like the basic thing that makes quantum computers, like our normal computers, are binary. Everything is either yes or no, on or off. That is all of computing power. Quantum computers have three stages, three possible versions: on, off, or both. Now, I don't understand what that means, but it's the Schrodinger's cat thing of just like it could be either, and that is what makes the possibility of quantum computers thousands of times more powerful than the computers we have. I don't understand that, but that's really the point he's making.
Yeah.
We talked to Heisenberg, who knows who Oppenheimer is.
I liked your paper on molecules.
Probably because you inspired it.
If I inspire anything else, let me know. We could publish together.
I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like one of the great scientists saying, I'm so interested in you that we should do something together.
I also think it's probably a very small community. Right?
Yeah.
Like they talk because not a lot of people are operating at that level. And so when you see someone who's coming up that is getting your stuff and is expanding what you immediately want to know who that person is.
I mean, there are plenty of people who don't want to talk movies the way you and I want to talk movies.
That's true. I'm always fascinated when I meet one in the wild. Yes.
But the thing is, you could still talk to them about a movie.
Oh, sure.
And whereas these guys, they can't talk to anybody. Like the only people who understand, there's no way you could go like, I was thinking about quarks this morning and wondering if this particle would, there's literally nobody they can talk to except each other.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer, at this offer of a possible paper with Heisenberg, says,
I have to get back to America.
Why? There's no one there taking quantum mechanics seriously.
That's exactly why.
And Robbie says, that he really wants to get back to New Mexico.
You're from New Mexico?
No, New York, but my brother and I have a ranch outside Santa Fe. That's the America I miss right now.
Then it's best you get home, cowboys.
It is really true, by the way, when Oppenheimer discovered New Mexico, it was life-changing for him. I mean, it is, and it's so odd to think about this guy, super intellectual, super scientist guy who is very slim and doesn't look like a tough, person who's going to go out and ride the range. But in fact, he absolutely loved it.
It's just like Teddy Roosevelt. No one thought Teddy was, he was very slim, very like all that after his wife and mom died and went out there. And, I think within some intellectuals is a desire to test themselves in physically manly ways. That's very interesting.
There's a great book called Range, which is sort of the answer to, which I mentioned earlier, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, the basic theme is the 10,000 hours story, is that the people that are the great people are people that dedicated themselves to this single skill over and over and over again. That's how you get to be great. And this book is all about all the people who didn't do that, is that there are a lot of people who there are a lot of like scientists who are also musicians. And, I think it's like Roger Federer maybe that really didn't take tennis very seriously, that he played all sorts of different sports. And I'm certainly much more like that, of interested in a whole bunch of different stuff. And all the stuff I'm interested in informs this podcast,
Yeah.
I mean, and I think Oppenheimer's love of New Mexico and poetry and music and philosophy and reading languages and stuff like that is part of his greatness.
Yes.
Did you ever encounter Heisenberg again?
Not in person, no, but you might say our paths crossed.
And then we kind of go back to the deposition where he explains that after he came back from Europe, he gets jobs at Caltech and up at Berkeley. And we cut to actual Berkeley campus. And it makes me so happy because this is really, truly one of my happy places. Like, I absolutely adore the Cal campus. It's gorgeous. And every time, like when Benjamin goes up to visit, what's her name in The Graduate, they go to UCLA. They don't actually go up to Berkeley. So it just makes me happy seeing it. And he goes into a classroom where he sees Josh Hartnett, who plays Lawrence. He's great, I think.
This was kind of the beginning of the rebirth of Josh Hartnett again. This role here, and then eventually he got into that M. Night Shyamalan film Trap as the lead of that. And now people have been really banging the drum for him to be part of the Marvel or DC universe. I've seen people want him to be the Batman or James Gunn's Brave and the Bold Batman if they end up doing it. So it's amazing how this role changed people's ideas about Josh, because I think he's a fantastic actor, but clearly he had kind of like, went to the background a little bit, even though he was good in Penny Dreadful as a series, but not a lot of people watched that. I think he's great here. Yeah.
I think he's so great. And what I think he does so well is he doesn't have that many lines, and yet we understand the nature of a very, very interesting friendship that develops between these very different people, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I want to say something to add to what I had said before. I know I talked about Nolan as Kubrick and Spielberg, but I also think he's got an element of Soderbergh to him. And by that, I mean, he is able to bring out the best in actors that maybe you don't 100% think are great actors. And so I think this is Josh Hartnett is a great example of that. Hartnett was good in all those teen movies, all those rom-com type of things, but like nobody really took him that seriously, right? But when you see him in this film, he is towering over Cillian Murphy. I mean, Cillian's lost a bunch of weight, so he looks emaciated to a degree, but and his voice booms, and there's a confidence and there's an energy and a swag. Like, he's a man. And I think there's an element of the director coming in going, this is what I need you to be and what I can direct you to be. Will you step up and do it? And so Soderbergh does that in all of his movies. I'd say J-Lo and Julia Roberts have never delivered better performances than they do in his movies. And so I think Hartnett kind of falls in that camp as well.
And I should say, by the way, that there are a lot of these names that we're going to hear were the buildings at Berkeley when I was there, because all these scientists became really famous. And of course, there's Lawrence Livermore Labs, and there's also the Lawrence Hall of Science, which was one of the science museums I went to as a kid. And also, incidentally, I don't know that I've ever said this on the Cine-Files, but I did not actually propose to Karen. Karen proposed to me at... And it was just below Lawrence Hall of Science, which has a beautiful view of the Bay Area. It was very romantic.
There you go. Nice.
So, and we talk about the fact that he wants to set up a school of quantum theory.
I hear you want to start a school of quantum theory.
I am starting it next door.
They put you in there.
I asked for it. Wanted to be close to you experimentalists.
I think this is really key, is that, and it's this interesting thing is that we've already seen Oppenheimer in the lab. He sucks.
Yes,
but he understands that he needs somewhere to test out his theories, which is what Lawrence says.
Theory will get you only so far. We're building a machine to accelerate electrons.
Magnificent.
Would you like to help?
Build it? Oh, no. No. But I am working on theories I'd like to test with it.
And then we ask when he starts teaching, and he says,
I've got my first in an hour.
Seminar?
Pupil.
So he's only got this amazing scientist to come to Berkeley, and only one student has signed up for his class.
Yeah, which is kind of teased earlier when the German guy Heisenberg says to him that nobody's studying quantum mechanics in America, and he goes, "That's exactly why I'm going back to America." Yeah. So it's smart. I love the way that they start this with like one student to start this interest in the class.
Well, and the way they film it is great, because the student is Lomnitz. He comes into the classroom, sees he's all alone, and has sort of a oh shit moment, and tries to get away.
Yeah.
I must have missed the...
Mr. Lomnitz?
No. Yeah.
What do you know about quantum mechanics?
I have a grasp on the basics.
Then you're doing it wrong.
Is light made up of particles or waves?
Quantum mechanics says it's both. How can it be both?
It can't.
It can't. But it is. It's paradoxical, and yet it works.
And this is this thing you see from Cillian Murphy, is that, because we haven't seen it up to this point, we saw it start to build a little bit in Europe, but when he turns the charisma on, Oppenheimer becomes the most fascinating person you could possibly be around.
Yeah, agreed.
And that is, by the way, what all the scientists said, that he was just an electric personality, that he was, his genius was such that all the other geniuses were drawn to him. And that's what we see in the next moment. Because first, this one student realizes he's kind of scored being the only student. Oppenheimer turns around towards the blackboard, and when he turns back, there are more students.
Yeah.
It's a really nice way to build up what he is doing on the Berkeley campus. And by the way, so naturally, after Cillian got the gig, Nolan immediately hooked him up with Kip Thorne to start learning about the science. Well, Kip Thorne had actually been a student of Oppenheimer's at several seminars.
Wow.
So he knew him, and he talked about to Cillian about his charisma, his style, and in particular, his ability to inspire. This was a guy who inspired, not surprisingly considering what he did, but this is a guy who inspired other scientists to do great work.
Well, I think it's important for the actor to convey and portray Oppenheimer correctly, but it's also great to have that element of Oppenheimer entice us as the viewer, right? Yeah. We need to find him charming. We need to find him engaging, because I guarantee you 90% of the people who saw this film do not understand quantum mechanics at all and would not be able to put it into a sentence at all. So you've got to make us believe that we got to trust this guy and where he's going, and that his fascination with it, we will borrow that fascination and go on the journey with him. And I think Cillian does an excellent job of that in this movie, which allows us to have more patience with him when he goes into the darker moments.
I 100% agree. Oh, and I would adjust your percentage to 99.9%. Donut, and it's probably higher than that. I mean, the number of people that actually understand anything about quantum mechanics is real small. But this is the magic trick. You're right, of Cillian's performance. And I mean, this is a densely scientific movie.
Yes.
Yes. And there's so much conversation about the super and implosion and all these things. And man, Nolan just makes it flow with you. Yeah. You never bump on it.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking about stars and what happens when a star dies. And what's interesting is that his classes has grown, and he's brainstorming with the students. Now, maybe he already knows all the answers, but he's letting them participate.
But if that furnace cools and gravity starts winning, it contracts.
Density increases.
Correct. Increasing gravity.
Increasing density.
And?
It's a vicious cycle until, what's the limit here?
He says with excitement.
I don't know. See where the math takes us. I guarantee it's somewhere no one's been before.
That's the real thing. That's the key to a scientist, I think, is the excitement is I don't know. And the other thing that's going on is that Lawrence is sitting in on the class and is fascinated.
Which makes sense, right? You want to know what this guy's talking about if he's going to use your machine to try out his theories. You want to know where he's going with stuff. So, but it also kind of builds this friendship, of course, as you mentioned earlier.
And by the way, everyone says that he was not only a great teacher and a great mentor, but he didn't take credit. There are a whole bunch of people that got Nobel Prizes. Oppenheimer never got a Nobel Prize. That really the ideas had started with Oppenheimer. For instance, antimatter. Oppenheimer is the first person who thought of the concept of antimatter, and of course the black hole, which we'll see in the film. Those are both Oppenheimer things that he easily could have gotten Nobel Prizes for, but did not. And now I would like to, I know, digressions that happen sometimes.
Here we go.
And
Sure.
I was thinking about this. This is just a construct that this is a Steve idea, but I was trying to think about like the different ways of approaching science and what's so different about what's going on with Oppenheimer. So an important thinker of science for the West is Aristotle. And the way Aristotle did stuff is he believed that everything was for something. Everything was connected to an element and it had a purpose. And so his way of trying to figure things out is like, well, what is this for? Oh, this water, we need to drink this in order to survive, and it needs to flow to the river. And things fall because they want to be in a lower position. So he observes the world, tries to figure out what it is for, and that is how he comes up with science. So naturally, he says, since things fall because they want to get to the earth to find the place of rest, heavier objects obviously must fall faster than lighter objects. He never went out and bothered to drop a heavy object and a light object at the same time because he would see that that wasn't true. But he wasn't interested in measurement. When you get to Newton and Galileo, they go, let's measure everything. Let's really observe the world and then try to come up with mathematics that explain that. So measurement and mathematics. And it's very much about the world we see. Then you get to the thing that Oppenheimer just said of light is a particle and a wave at the same time. That's coming out of theory. Einstein is doing all this math of things he can't see.
Right.
He is, and then what Oppenheimer is now doing is he's just doing math. He can't you can't observe a black hole. He can't see one. All the effects and things they're talking about are just what the math is predicting. So that's like the third stage. So it's like first it's just what is everything for, no measurements. Then we add measurements and math to explain everything we're observing. And now we're taking the math beyond what we can observe in the world and saying this says something real about the universe. That's totally different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Which is, of course, how he figures out that there must be a black hole. It's just math. And then Nolan does something. He uses this going back and forth to the committee or to the deposition so well because it allows him to just introduce a piece of exposition and then take you right into the scene. So in the committee meeting, we hear that Oppenheimer, that Mr. Hoover started a file on Oppenheimer because of his left-wing activities. And then we see that he's got on his chalkboard in his lab is a message about a rally coming up. And Lawrence is there, and he is not pleased.
You shouldn't let them bring their politics in the classroom, Oppie.
I wrote that. Lawrence, you embrace the revolution in physics. Can you see it everywhere else? Picasso, Stravinsky, Freud, Marx.
Well, this is America, Oppie. We had our revolution.
Where do you think he comes from in this scene? Is Lawrence coming from a place of political difference in ideology? Or is he coming from a place of, I've grown to care about you as a friend. Don't do this because this is going to possibly cause troubles for you down the road. Like it's an interesting thing, especially because looking at the movie, Steve, when I first saw it, of course, a few years ago, I know what Berkeley represented in the 60s. And so to me, it's like interesting to see this even back in the 40s that it had this kind of energy to it. So why would a professor be telling another professor not to feel this way? It's fascinating, or not to do this. It's fascinating.
I think it's actually several things. I think two of them are just my feeling about Lawrence's politics is he's a moderate lefty. You know what I mean? Like whereas Oppenheimer's much farther to the left. So they would disagree at the levels that you and I disagree, or like, you know what I mean? Like they're in the same ballpark. But I also think I think it's concern about Oppenheimer. I also think he thinks that there should be, and it's interesting because this is we're literally having these conversations today of, what is the border between politics? What role should a political points of view have in the classroom? And he just brought politics into a physics lab. And I think Lawrence is like, no, that shouldn't happen here. We're here to do physics. We're not here to do that. And the other thing, he has that great scene later on where he kind of explains what he thinks of Berkeley politics. And I think it was accurate when I was at Berkeley. There are a lot of people who are saying a lot of stuff, and a lot of them are spoiled, kids who are in a top school who haven't really lived in the world. Yeah. And that's probably true today too, But I also think we need those young people at Berkeley or anywhere else who have the fire in them and the ideals, because old people like you and I, you get beaten a little bit by the world sometimes.
You get tired. Yes, 100%. Yeah.
Seriously, keep it out of the lab.
And he goes, well, and I love that he says, well, my landlady is also having a meeting pretty soon. You want to come to that? And he says, this is what we were saying before.
I have sampled the Berkeley political scene. It's all just philosophy postgrads and communists talking integration.
And this is great. And this is where I kind of feel like I see a little bit of where Lawrence's politics actually are.
Yeah.
You don't care about integration.
I want to vote for it, not talk about it, especially on a Friday. Come on, let's eat.
I think that's a great line.
It's a great line. And I like that you, as a viewer, are challenged by both of their points of views, you know? And this is a script that is co-written, right, by Christopher Nolan. So what is Nolan saying to us through these interactions? about politics, about what's going on in our world, right? And when is this film? Like 2020? When was Oppenheimer?
2023, I think.
So 2023. So very recent, 3 years ago. So this idea, in a lot of ways, I think Nolan is talking to us about politics, but I don't know if he's choosing a side between Oppenheimer and Lawrence. But he's presenting both sides equally, which I think is a good thing for a director, a filmmaker to do in certain situations. Present both sides, let the audience decide where they fall, where they may. And I like that. Yeah.
I think he is choosing a side, but it is neither Lawrence nor Oppenheimer's side.
Okay.
I think he is choosing the side of a free flow of ideas, of people being of different perspectives should be able to talk. And because one of the big things this whole movie is about is, do you shut down somebody because of their beliefs? You know,
right.
That's, you know, so I think he's saying no to that.
But he doesn't make Lawrence a villain here.
No.
So in a way, you know, because what Lawrence is saying is keep the politics out of this area and what have you. So it's an interesting commentary.
And then Nolan does the same thing, which was go back to the committee where Robert Downey Jr., where Strauss says, and he's being observed and they were taking pictures of license plates. And then we see that that's exactly what's happening. Robert sees his car being photographed. And then as he's looking at that, his brother comes out of nowhere and scares him. And this is Dylan Arnold, who plays Frank. And they head into a house. By the way, these houses all the houses are in Pasadena. Is where they shot them. They didn't shoot this stuff in Berkeley, but Pasadena doubles Berkeley really, really well.
Right.
And immediately as he goes into this party, Florence Pugh, who plays Jean, spots him right away. Yeah. Does she know who he is already?
Probably. Listen, the women in this film, it's an interesting characterization of both Jean and later Emily Blunt's character, his actual wife. And in both instances, you kind of get that feeling that he is essentially spotted and tracked down and connected to, right? So did both of them in their separate times set their sights on him? As you said, Jean notices him immediately. I think she knows because she's part of that community. People have been talking about this wonderkind, right? And so I'm sure that she knows immediately. So she's curious about it. But of course, we find out Jean is also, sadly unstable and has mental health issues of her own. And so how much of this is maybe her exploring this and then not realizing what it's going to do to her down the road?
And then Frank introduces him to Dr. Chevalier, who's played by Jefferson Hall. He's going to have a very, very interesting relationship with this guy. But and it's true. He is a lifelong friend of Chevalier, despite everything that happens with him.
Yeah, and this guy is a really good actor. For those of you who know or watching House of the Dragon right now, he plays the twin Lannister brothers. And so that's him that we just saw in the opening season being on that ship and seeing what happens with him and that female warrior who is trying to get a Corliss. So yeah, he's been on for 2 seasons now, or 14 episodes now. He's really good. So I forgot that he was in this movie. And without his beard, he's almost unrecognizable. Yeah. But I like his energy here, man.
And then Robert does the beautiful move of trying to introduce his brother and his girlfriend and cannot remember her name, even though he heard her name 3 minutes before.
This is my little brother, Frank. And this is...
Still Jackie.
Hello, Still Jackie.
What an interesting subplot, Steve. What do you make of this? Because later on, we see that he is upset that his brother is marrying Jackie. So was this a thing? I don't remember this in the book. You read the book. Is this a big deal in the book that he had disapproved of his brother's wife or girlfriend? What is that?
I don't remember anything in the book about disapproving of Jackie. I do remember disapproving of them joining the Communist Party and believing that Jackie pushed Frank into joining the Communist Party,
which of course comes up in the film too. Yeah,
because what I think is going on, the way the film portrays it, I mean, Robert's a snob. We had the jokes about, what side of New York you were going on with Robbie.
Right.
There's the lowly shoe salesman comment.
Yeah.
And now this, she's the waitress, know.
Right.
Like it is not his best trait, in my opinion.
Chevalier, you're in languages?
And your reputation precedes you.
What have you heard?
That you're teaching a radical new approach to physics, I have no chance of understanding, but I hadn't heard you're a party member.
But I'm not.
Oh, not yet.
And I think we talked about this in On the Waterfront, which is that, why were these people joining the Communist Party in the 30s?
Right.
What, and what's really weird about this is now, today, all of a sudden, we're hearing anger about socialists and communists.
Yes, well, socialists and communists are winning primaries, as we just saw in a few states, in New York and in other states. Like, it is happening, and this is causing quite a reaction, of course, from the right, but also within the left, quarters of the left, saying, "What are we doing here? Are we surrendering general elections if we go this route?" But it's like the people are speaking, and they're voting for these people because these ideas are starting to appeal again to a number of people. It's no surprise that we have a fascism, in my opinion, that is reminiscent of stuff we saw in the 40s and what was also going on before all that fascism started sparking in the late 30s, in the 40s, into a global issue. There was also communism going on at the same time and socialism going on in America. People have these, people forget, we were not just a bunch of capitalists and a democracy that just absolutely believe this. There have always been these ideas. Nazism took hold in America back in the 30s as well, and we see it now happening in our world as well. So it's like there's always been that thing here bubbling under the surface, and there have always been people who are willing to look at these ideas and not get caught up in the Red Scare stuff of it all and explore it. I'm not advocating for it, but I know it does happen here. So I like that it's highlighted here. And it's very interesting because I think this film would have been received so differently if it came out now, as you were saying, Steve, because of what's going on in our politics now. And of course, people are, as we're recording this, people are going after Nolan for different reasons, for his Odyssey movie, for racist reasons, and possibly because purist reasons over the mythology of the book. But it's causing people from the right to go after him and claim that he's been a leftist pinky filmmaker for a long time. And some of them have even brought up the way he highlights communism in this movie as an example of it. So it's interesting.
So I have many, many thoughts. What's most interesting to me, what this movie highlights, and I think what part of Nolan's point is these are not black and white issues. The whole thing with Oppenheimer is that he is interested in some ideas of the Communist Party, dislikes other things. And so it's not in the middle,
right.
I want to say a couple of other things about this, which is that, and to some degree, I'd say this is true today, is that if in the 30s you really cared about women's rights, unions, civil rights,
right,
and the working class, the place that was talking most to those issues was the Communist Party.
Right.
Obviously this is under the New Deal and FDR. And so there is, much more money and effort going towards keeping people, getting people jobs and helping the poor. But still the number one place to do that is the Communist Party. And the thing that is different about what is going on today is that did people with all of those ideals join the Communist Party for those reasons and not to help the Soviet Union? Absolutely they did. But the Soviet Union really was involved in the American Communist Party. They really were trying to, and they were,
infiltrate.
And they came to be a big enemy. So when you get to the 50s, that's a real thing. Today, there's no Soviet Union. That's backing Mondami or someone, a socialist who just won a primary. That doesn't exist. This isn't, that's the big difference today.
And there's a bit of a hypocrisy because people go, well, Russia's doing with Putin is behind all this. Meanwhile, because the right wing, some of the right wing members of the people going off about this, but there's your God or there's your person, Trump, palling around with Putin. So it's like, which is it? Where's the consistency in thought with this kind of stuff? But it gets muddied.
And Putin's not a communist,
Right, exactly.
All this stuff is all over the place. And I'll just say, then we'll move on. But all these words, socialist, communist, fascist, people use them all the time and don't actually have good definitions. And they certainly don't have consistent definitions. So what someone is saying when they say those things, it's kind of hard to tell,
Yeah. They're talking about quantum mechanics. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But we hear a little bit about Robert's political activities, that he supported the war against Franco in the Spanish Civil War. He's, trying to get funds to Jews in Germany to get them out of the country.
Well, if you're going to send money to Spain, do it through the Communist Party. They can get it to the front lines.
This is a key thing because this is going to come up later in his deposition. And at this moment, Jean comes over with drinks, and she has eyes only for Oppie at this point.
Yeah.
And this is like the sexiest discussion of communism I have ever heard,
Well, Florence Pugh is sexy.
Robert here says he's not a communist.
Well, then he doesn't know enough about it.
Oh, I've read Das Kapital, all 3 volumes. Does that count?
So, first of all, those are big books. I had to read them at Cal, or I had to read Das Kapital at Cal.
Oof.
It was rough, man. Well, I was a political science major. Like it was brutal.
It's turgid stuff. There's some thinking. Ownership is theft.
Property.
Property?
You know those things on the internet where it's like the perfect self-own moment that someone posts? This is kind of like that.
Property, not ownership.
I'm sorry. I read it in the original German.
It's not about the book. It's about the ideas. And you sound uncommitted.
Well, I'm committed to thinking freely about how to improve our world. Why limit yourself to one dogma?
I think is very central to this film.
Yes.
You're a physicist. You pick and choose rules? Or do you use the discipline to channel your energies into progress?
Something about how she says, channel your energies into progress. It's not a sexy line, and except kind of is.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like the moment of like, well, what are we really talking about here?
I like a little wiggle room. Do you always toe the party line?
I like my wiggle room too.
I'm going like, oh, it's on.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is what we see in the next scene. And she's on top of him. It is very sexy. It's so funny because Christopher Nolan, there's not a lot of romance in Nolan movies. And even like in Inception, where there is one, it is really just fraught and painful.
It's tragic. Yes.
It's tragic.
Yes.
And here we have this really sexy scene.
Yeah.
But it's weird,
Yeah, I don't remember, because it's been a while since I've seen Memento. I don't know if there's a scene between him and Carrie Ann Moss.
There is. They
there
sleep
is.
together.
Okay.
He
So
doesn't remember it, but it exists.
So it's been a bit, because I don't remember anything like that in Batman. I don't know if there's any of that in Prestige. And so it's like, he doesn't do a lot of it. But I think for this approach, it's framed and shot really well. And it's very sexy.
And then she kind of stops.
Wait.
Unexpected.
What?
For a physicist.
That's and I'm like, what was unexpected? Was it
She's probably had
unexpectedly good?
Yeah. She's probably
think
had some boring lays, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And then we're talking about the bookshelf full of Freud, and he said, because she's studying to be a psychiatrist.
Shelf full of Freud?
Well, actually, my background's more,
Jungian?
analysis.
And then he talks about what happened when he was at Cambridge.
I tried to poison my tutor.
Did you hate him?
I liked him very much.
Which is really weird. It's still, and the fact that he shares this with this woman who presumably he just met is really interesting.
You just needed to get laid.
It took my analysts 2 years, and I don't think they ever put it that succinctly.
You have everyone convinced you're more complicated than you actually are.
We're all simple souls, I guess.
I'm not.
That is great. Like, how much time have we taken to get completely intrigued by who is this person?
Right.
Like, what is this about?
And using the exchange to foreshadow what we're going to see about her later, that she is a complicated soul. Yeah.
She finds a book of the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit, which, of course, he's learning to read Sanskrit as you do. And she brings the book to her, and she's holding it up in front of her so that he's essentially looking at the book, which is blocking her chest,
Yeah.
Read this.
Well, in this part, Vishnu reveals his multi-armed self.
No. Read the words.
And now she's on top of it.
And now I am become death. Destroyer of worlds.
He lays back.
I think this is a commentary on violence and sex.
Oh.
And that they are aphrodisiacs for people. And I think Oppenheimer as you spoke about that story of him almost dropping the suitcase, almost killing a woman by dropping the suitcase, if that story is true, and certainly the Apple story we see in the movie, there is a fascination with death. This is all Nolan just like putting these little subconscious seeds in us because we are leading towards him killing thousands of Japanese people with nuclear bombs, right? And the ramifications of that he's going to deal with afterwards. And so there's this like undercurrent of this coursing throughout and making it connected to this sexual thing. And of course, this line becomes a very famous line connected to Oppenheimer. And so it's like, it's such an interesting way that he's laying this all out for us to catch, because this could just be a normal sex scene and it's cool. And if you've ever had scenes like this, and certainly I've had moments with women like this, it's so much fun. It's cute. It's interesting when you're young, but it's like, there's something more going on here. It's not in a movie unless it's serving a purpose, especially in a movie like this. And so I think it's a little way of like foreshadowing that he is going to be a destroyer of worlds, but also that there's a little bit of an aphrodisiac with violence and sex. And the line gets blurred sometimes with those kinds of things.
I totally agree. I think it's playing on all those levels. And I think for those people who knew that quote and that Oppenheimer had used it to describe the Trinity, like it's one of those things where you don't have to know the history in order to enjoy this movie at all. This movie explains everything. But if you did know that, then when he says that at this moment, it's like, oh, fuck, literally.
Yeah.
By the way, this did not play well in India. Very, very controversial to quote the Bhagavad Gita during a sex scene. There were protests. They described it as a direct assault on the religious belief of 1 billion Hindus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're off to New Mexico. It looks gorgeous. Obviously it's redundant to say, but it looks absolutely stunning. And it ends up, he's gone on a camping trip with his good friends, Lawrence, and with his brother, Frank.
Yeah.
And they're in a tent drinking. It's so funny. I've done camping. I even did some serious, like, way out, backpacking in the backcountry for I did a 100-mile pack in the Rockies, Wow. I have done that. But the amount of alone that these guys are, like that doesn't really exist in the world anymore, to be that alone. It's very hard to do. And Frank announces that he's getting married. And Oppenheimer says the worst thing you can ever say. I mean, Lawrence is just congratulations and doing everything you're supposed to do. And Oppie says, to Jackie? Like, you never can ask that question.
Frank is so pissed. He's like, of course, Jackie. Who do you think I was referencing? Yeah.
And Lawrence immediately goes, I'm going to go look at the stars. He hightails it out.
We joined the party, and you can't hide your disapproval. Why? Is that because that's supposed to be your thing?
I haven't joined the party, Frank. And I don't think she should have convinced you to either.
Half of the faculty is communist.
Not that half. I'm your brother, Frank, and I want you to be cautious.
And I want to wring your neck. I won't live my life afraid to make a mistake.
Which I think is real interesting.
We don't get a lot with him and Frank. So these scenes have to carry more weight. And so Frank, in a way, is giving us a window into his upbringing with Robert. And knowing that Robert, because we just see samples of this in flashback at the beginning of the movie of how troubled he is. So God knows how that manifested itself when he was a little boy, a young teenager, a young adult. This is stuff that Frank has witnessed, right? And so when he's saying, I won't live my life afraid of making a mistake, Robert has probably lived his life that way, which is because of all the pain and the torture and the way he sees the world. He doesn't want to be seen as unusual or different or abnormal until later when he embraces his gift. At the time, when you're growing up, it's hard to feel proud about a gift that everybody's making fun of you about or that you feel abnormal about because no one else is doing it. So you don't want to make a mistake and draw attention to yourself. And so I think this is a little window that Robert is showing us Frank is showing us into Robert's time as a young kid.
What just occurred to me, and I'm not saying that this is a subtext here or that Nolan thought about it at all, but the fact is Christopher Nolan is the older, far more famous and far more brilliant brother of someone else kind of working in the same field.
Right, Jonathan. Yeah, exactly. Good point. Yeah.
But then he does turn it around. Oppenheimer does say, and I'm curious of how well you think he does this in this moment.
You're happy. I'm happy.
So then I'm happy you're happy that I'm happy.
Did Oppenheimer sell the if you're happy, I'm happy?
I think, yeah, it's funny. I kind of rewatched this scene when I was doing the rewatch a couple of times to kind of see the back and forth with them. And I think he gives Frank what he can give Frank. And I think Frank is a lifetime of taking what he can take from Robert.
Yeah, that's what
Robert
I think too.
surrenders it.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Whether it's authentic or not, whatever. You said what I need you to say. Let's move on.
I think Robert, and this is what's so interesting to me about the movie, and the way I see his character. And what's interesting is a very intimate film, but we don't actually really ever know what Oppenheimer's thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but what I think he spends a lot of time thinking about what is right, what is the right thing to do.
Yeah, right.
He might end up doing one of the worst things any human has ever done on some level, one could say. But that doesn't mean he's not thinking about doing what's right. And I think he knows as a brother, this is what I should do. This is the right thing to do right now.
Yeah.
But he isn't actually happy. And he's not quite capable of selling if you're happy, I'm happy.
Right.
He's saying it because that's what you're supposed to, what you should say.
Is Frank okay?
Yes. He just has a shitty brother.
It is special here.
When I was a kid, I thought if I could find a way to combine physics and New Mexico, my life would be perfect.
Which is really true. He really did think this. Like, this isn't made up for the movie.
That Mexico we saw today, one of my favorite places in the world. And tomorrow we'll climb it. What's it called? Los Alamos.
And I love that we hear Los Alamos. Just not only is the picture fading to black, but they fade the audio down.
Yeah.
So you just barely hear it.
It's a great 1-2 punch, because if you know the history of this, when him saying I want to combine physics and New Mexico, we know what this is leading us to.
Yeah.
And just to make sure we get it, he says Los Alamos, but as you said, it's just as the sound is fading. So it's for us to catch. It's a very smart way to do it that isn't necessarily banging you over the head over it, but you get it. Which is great.
And by the way, this is a technique almost no one ever does. You know, we fade to black all the time. But fading audio that you're supposed to hear isn't the way films usually work, but it works so great in this context.
Agreed.
He's walking with Jean. There's so many scenes with Jean where it's like, what is going on with her? Because she's clearly not feeling it.
I didn't expect to see you today.
Do I have to make an appointment?
I mean, because the whole exchange here it's clear that, he is more into her than she is into him, because she's got a lot of stuff going on with herself. But she knows that he can't have him fully because this will always be something he's much more interested in. So there's just little hints of this as we go along in their relationship. I think they love each other. But as Robert says later on, like, I'm not the guy for you. But that doesn't mean that you're now kind of, okay, we've accepted that and we move on and we're in a better place. No, it's clearly a lot of conflicts, internal conflicts with both of them.
For a character that is as restrained as Robert Oppenheimer,
Yeah.
the feeling I have is that their connection is electric. Like
Yes.
it is just over the top, super powerful, overwhelmingly sexual. And even though they're speaking in, these soft intellectual terms, there's something real. But I also think her struggles and, whatever is going on with her makes it almost impossible. And as you said, I think he's wrong for her too. Like I think, yeah. And it's so funny because we have two relationships that we see in, a fair amount of detail, both of which are really fraught, but both of which have a deep core of love at the center of them, know?
Yeah.
And then we see a guy run out of a barbershop still with the sheet on his, and Lawrence recognizes him and chases him. And I think it's interesting that Jean immediately does a 180 and starts walking away the other way. And Oppie is now chasing Alvarez up to Lawrence's lab.
So I just want to say real quick, Luis Alvarez is played by Alex Wolff, who is a damn good actor. Alex and I have faced each other in the Schmodown, and I beat him by a point, which he has never let me forget. Every time we see each other at functions, if we happen to run into each other, because he's an actor who's working all the time, if we run into each other at an award ceremony or possibly a screening, he always comes up to me, and the first thing he says is, "I want my revenge. I want my rematch." And so he's a really good guy. I've interviewed him twice on the Deep Cut. I've interviewed his brother as well. And their mom is the actress who was in 30-something. And so he comes from a long line, a long history of being an incredible performer. And I'm surprised at how little screen time he has in this movie, because he is so good. And so it's fascinating because we don't even get introduced to him, right? It's just him running out, and we know this guy is part of the crew, and he's got the headline, right? So it's just interesting how he does. It's very, what do you call it? It's very Thin Red Line-ish that we see all these great actors coming in and playing these small roles, but we don't really get enough time to sit down and get to know who they are because the focus is on them.
What? What is it?
They've done it. They've done it. Hahn and Strassman in Germany. They split the uranium nucleus.
So, John, at this moment, when the atom has been officially broken in two, when we've achieved fission, I think it's time to end part one of our exploration of Oppenheimer. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You can visit us on our Facebook page. Just do a search for the Cine-Files. It's Cine_Files on Twitter. It's the Cine-Files podcast on Instagram. And if you want to subscribe to the show, please do so at wherever you like to subscribe to podcasts. In fact, subscribe to the show at all the places. You can have different downloads from different services to different devices. That's the way I like to handle it. Exactly. You can also support the show at patreon.com/the Cine-Files, as well as on Apple Podcasts. And you can reach me at SR Morris on Twitter. John, how would people reach you?
You can always reach me at The Rocha Says on social media, but please head on over to my YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/John Rocha Says. Subscribe to that channel. Listen, thousands and thousands of you listen to our shows every week. I would love for you all to come support my YouTube channel and just subscribe there. You don't even have to watch any of the content. Just subscribe. It would mean so much. I'm trying to get to 50,000 subscribers. We're at 42 right now, so help us do that. But you can also subscribe to our Cine-Files YouTube channel. Find that there on YouTube as well, because we do live shows there, and we do other things. We just had our 10th anniversary show on there. If you guys haven't watched it or listened to it, that is up there for you all to watch as well.
And I think that's it for this week. We'll be back next time to continue our exploration of Oppenheimer right here on the Cine-Files.